Yeah, I was actually diagnosed with high functioning autism. So
Oh, that's cool. That's
yeah,
cool. I'm pretty sure that I've either got ADHD or autism. So like it's one of the two. We're pretty sure my girlfriend's got autism. So like this is why I kind of don't like them using autism as an insult as well. Like 'cause it just seems to get thrown around as if it's like some sort of bad thing. And it's like it's just really like a was it like a neurological variation? Do you know what I mean? Like it's I don't
yeah,
know.
it's just a label to be associated with something negative, a derogative term, regardless of
Yeah,
whether it actually means anything or not.
that's the thing. Like I think some people just use it. I think some people don't even use it in the same even reference in the condition even sometimes. So like it's quite a few words like that. Like and I did actually write a paper defending various uses of words and saying that you could, but like I think it's the fact that like they normally reference autistic behaviors and then usually have an attack. But
Well, I think
I
yeah,
don't.
the same thing on like retarded. Like that usually has nothing
Yeah,
to do with the actual condition. It's just a pejorative. Same with gay. Gay doesn't usually have
yeah,
anything to do with the
exactly.
actual position. So
Yeah,
most words are
well, I
like
think
the fuck, same thing.
yeah, exactly, exactly. I wrote. I think I wrote a Gitchian Wittgensteinian sort of defense of that, like where the definition, the contextual, the definition of the word is contextual upon the language community, which develops the concept.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
actually most insults are like that. I don't think any insults are actually
I
meant literally.
words are like that. That's how it works, like really. But I think that the issue is that they kind of do. It's when people reference the actual condition and then say it's negative. That's when it becomes like actual hate speech, I suppose. Um,
Yeah, that
not that
makes a
I
lot
think.
more sense, especially than the feminist position of just using the word in a pejorative is somehow hate. Like, no, that's
Oh no, I hate.
ridiculous.
No, I haven't managed to get a feminist to debate as yet. Actually, I keep trying, but like I reached out to Christy Winters.
Yeah.
I reached out to her. She said she would, but that she wasn't really keen on it because she was because she's a social scientist and I'm a philosopher. And she was like, "Well, I'm not really a philosopher, so you might want to find a philosopher." And I was like, "Well, where am I going to find a feminist philosopher?" So I did. I found a PhD feminist philosopher, PhD student, and she wouldn't debate us either. Like none of them really are willing to defend that position to critique. I've found. They kind of just want to tell you to educate yourself, and the reason you disagree is because you're not educated. And it's like, well, actually, I'm pretty educated. I mean, if I'm not educated, I mean, I'm doing a PhD. If I'm not educated enough to understand this, how much education do you need, man? But yeah, like, it's funny.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we're live. Sound looks good. I think sound good. Sound good. Question mark. Sound is not God. Good. Question mark. All right. We got a few people in chat. 20 something. Cool. So you're a vegan. I'm not a vegan, but I think veganism is moral, and we both hate Ask Yourself, so we have stuff in common.
Wouldn't I wouldn't go so far to say hate. I'd say that we've had issues in the past. I think that he probably hates me. Uh, um, but yeah, like I'm trying to like not stir anything with him at the minute, really, just because I think that like there's not really that much negativity between with at this point. But you know, you never know. I mean, I still don't use name the trait, although in my last debate, the guy basically asked us to use it against him. But I just used that. It was basically marginal cases because really that's what name the trait is in a normal debate because nobody ever uses the formal version. But yeah, like that's essentially all that I've had. Like I'm trying to like not attack him anymore, like in terms of his arguments, and I'm trying to like kind of stay back because he doesn't respond well.
What do you think is wrong with name the trait? Like, because from my perspective, I haven't studied much into it at all. I've just heard it like twice, and it sounds reasonable to me. It's like,
Oh, well, I did like I've actually got like basically a series on Name the Train, and I did that with like Shadow Starshine. I mentioned him to you before. He's like a non-vegan debater, and it was funny because it was like a vegan and a non-vegan kind of teaming up in this point just to kind of basically say that this argument doesn't work. I think Name the Trait is just a reconfiguration of marginal cases, and I think Ask Yourself kind of admits that. He says it's the same sort of family as he calls it.
what do you mean by a
Um,
reconfiguration of marginal cases?
I think that it does exactly the same thing. I think that the only thing that it tries to it, the only thing that it attempts to do that's different is tries to apply it. He tries to apply it to any meta-ethical position, um, and he doesn't use, like, for example, in marginal cases, they use the concept of morally relevant. And moral relevancy is something that I think is dependent upon marginal cases is dependent upon. So if someone comes up and says, I'm an egoist, the only thing of value is my own, my own interests and its expression. I don't think that any marginal cases is going to come to the conclusion. Like, you could go like, right, well, why do you care about like all these different groups? And it's just going to go extrinsic moral value, extrinsic moral value, extrinsic moral value, because everything's based upon myself, on egoism, and that's how everyone functions, right? And you probably go social contract theory kind of sort of scenario, in which case you can't really run marginal cases on that person. You're going to have to go into meta ethics and challenge the egoism.
So your objection is that name the trait is essentially just picking the most strange cases you can think of and seeing that the fact that they can't account for that is trying to defeat their whole position, when really their position might be able to account for most things, even if it can't those really strange marginal cases?
Well, I think that doesn't even need to go that far. Like, I think, like, for example, like this idea of trait equalization, like, it doesn't actually function if you apply it. Like, look, if you like, I had a debate with like Brain and so on. I had a debate with Brain on Vegan Gains' server as well, with Foot Soldier. And trait equalization, it doesn't make any sense in the way it's worded. I haven't seen the new, if he's reworded it again, because he changes name of the trait every so often. So he might have reworded it again, and he might have fixed the problem. So I'm not sure. But when I was critiquing it, the issue with name the trait was this primarily was trait equalization. It was essentially the idea that you can turn ontological object A into ontological object B, and they also must remain as two separate objects. So if you were to turn object A into object B, it would have never been object A in the first place. It
Right,
would have always
Leibniz's
been
law of
object B.
identity.
Yeah, Leibniz's law, exactly. And that's basically that's what I used against it. He didn't agree. Uh, and also they try to say, oh, but it operates in a separate, they try to use modal logic to defend it. But then I just said, like, that's not how the necessitation law works. You can't just throw out normal logic because it's modal. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, so that's
And
way further down the rabbit hole than I've gone, because I just understand it as like there is a property that makes things moral, and I think it's consciousness. And so if it has consciousness, killing it is immoral, and if it doesn't have consciousness, killing it isn't immoral, which is why it's totally fine to kill plants, but it's immoral to kill animals. But it seems like in that kind of an argument, the name the trait actually works, because it is a particular trait that this class of things has that this class of things doesn't have.
oh yeah, marginal cases and stuff like that. Like, those kinds of arguments, they're useful. Like, I said that like before. Like, I'm not saying that like these arguments are useless, but like, if they're not useful against everyone, and in all circumstances, which they kind of use it as like this kind of multi-tool. To try and, like, oh, we'll just name the trait, and then we'll get to the point in which you say something which is like, it's this trait, blah blah blah. But it's like, if someone says, right, well, actually, I'm a moral anti-realist, and there's no such thing as ethics, or like, I'm a nihilist or something like that, and you name the trait on them. What's the trait? There's no such thing as ethics. Well, like, it doesn't work.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I totally understand that as a criticism. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And as well, like, I think as well, like, I like the idea of consciousness as being the sort of baseline for ethics. I think I agree for the most part. So, like, moving on to like our kind of contention, I think from what I was watching, like, obviously I was watching you debate Dr. Alex Malpass. I think it's Malpass, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. And interesting. Like, I was interested, and I think, to be honest, we agree on almost everything. We talk about imposition of will a lot, and the best of all possible worlds. Um, Imposition of will is very much aligning with my continental roots. Like, I'm a Hegelian. The idea of talking about will is vitally important, and but I kind of want to understand what you mean by will, and whether we mean the same thing. And also, you did say that when you're in a normative sense, when you're trying to work out what is the best action to take, that we have to refer to the best of all possible worlds. So I'll let you speak now. If you want to just say, what was it? Was the what do you mean by will necessarily, and why we should refer to the best of all possible worlds?
Well, by will, I mean something sort of like desires, but more generally, like if I want something or decide I want to take a specific path, even if I don't necessarily want it, that choice that I make is my will, essentially. I like this piece of ice cream, or I like to go play that hard video game or whatever. Those are my wills, or what I will to do. So it's just the consciousness plus some kind of choice.
Right. Okay. So is that just purely volition then?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. We'll get onto that in a second. And then the next thing, oh, actually, let's just run with that first because it's the meta ethics. We'll get to the normative aspect in a minute. So this idea of volition being the grounding of ethics, why would you say that someone's ability to choose would be the grounding of ethics? So, for example, if someone wanted to kill themselves, would you say that in the best of all possible worlds, we should allow them
Yes.
to? Really? Okay. Yeah, I disagree. Um, um, and I use the concept of will as well. So I would say that someone can be mistaken in their preferences in respect to their interests. And I would say that, when you talk about desires, I think that when you look at desire, it's not a single desire that characterizes the human condition. And it's not a single person's desire for that from that point that also characterizes the concept of will, not just an individual's will, but the concept of will itself, which is a Hegelian concept. You've got like the absolute spirit or universal will, as it is. So in terms of individualistically, if you look at the sort of an egoist utopia in which everyone kind of does what they want and don't get in each other's way, kind of almost Ayn Randian kind of what is it? What the desires of rational men do not contradict one another kind of conclusion, right? I still think that you're not going to be in the best of all possible worlds. One of the reason I would argue that is essentially because you can be mistaken about what is in your own interests. So a heroin addict, for example, who takes heroin might want to take heroin, but will be mistaken on their reasons and justifications for taking it. They may think that this will bring them happiness, whilst this will bring them suffering. And if you can show that, then can you say that they are doing what they are doing their will? And the best person who argues that for this, I think one of the easiest people to kind of grasp is Socrates in Gorgias, and he says, "Is the fool free when he does what he wants, or is the tyrant free when he does what he wants?" And the point is that freedom isn't necessarily at the expression of one's preferences to be purely unrestricted. Freedom is the expression of rational self-determination. And I think that's where me and you would disagree there. I would say that what you are, when I was to say, if it is truly your will, then you should be able to give me true justified reasons for your action. And that was what makes it your will. That you are in possession of it, that you hover over your own existence in a way that you are able to analyze your own existence in a form of self-consciousness and know yourself for what you are in a way that would actually bring you happiness. In which case we would move from preferences to interests. You could say, I am wrong. I was wrong for wanting to do that. It wouldn't bring me happiness. And I could see the reasons for that. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I would disagree. I don't think it's not about happiness. I don't care if you choose happiness. You can choose to kill yourself. You can choose to do lots of heroin. You can choose to cut your arm off, choose whatever you want. I think the choice is individually yours for whatever reason you want, whether it's good or bad, rational or irrational. Don't care. You get to decide whatever reasons that are your preferences, and you can decide whatever way you want to go with that. That I think is far more moral. I think that, for example, if there's some person who wants to take heroin or whatever, and you force them not to take heroin, that would be immoral. You would be restricting their will. That would be an involuntary imposition on will, regardless of what they think about it. So I don't think that the rational decisions in any way make a difference, or whether or not it's going to make them happy makes a difference, or whether or not it's in their interest makes a difference. I think it's all about just the volition, their choice. They get to decide what they want to have occur to them, and nothing else matters.
What makes a choice your own then?
Well, it's just because I'm a determinist, so I think it's purely neurological. I think that your the way your brain processes information to have a preference one way or the other is what makes it yours, because it's determined by your brain, essentially, your
Okay.
nature, something like that.
In which case, can you ever say that you truly I mean, one, I'm not a determinist. I'll get onto that in a minute. But if your choices are chosen, like your desires are given to you by your nature, and the content of your desires are also then given to you by your nature. Um, by that I mean the object from which you desire. Like, like I want this like cup there, like, and I reach out and grab it, and it becomes mine. I have fulfilled my desire, and I feel pleasure. Um, if that's given to you by nature, how can you say that it is yours? And if you on like what makes it, like, I guess I would say that is the action then yours at all? And is it volition? Like, it's not then the restriction of, like, there's no freedom there. Yeah. So there's no way to say that it was yours. It simply occurs and you're an observer.
Right. So it's only yours in the compatibilist sense. So compatibilism is the position that free will and determinism are not at odds. You can have free will even though you're determined. So even though your neurological state is purely determined by pre-existing physical forces, the flexibility of your neurology to do things in the world is what we're going to call that freedom. We're going to call that free will in a sense. And then that is essentially what you have. And so even though your actions are completely determined by pre-existing physical forces, you still have something we call free will, even if it's not. And that is sufficient for what I mean by volition. I don't actually care if it's fully free. I don't need libertarian free will.
Seems like it's the illusion of free will then, no?
But it's just a different definition. It's not like saying there is a freeness there. It's all just definitional of saying that freedom is the thing we feel, even if it's not actually free. We're going to call that thing we feel free. And so,
Right.
so
Right.
for me,
And then
it's
why does that
totally
have moral purport then?
well, because to me, that's what it matters in morality. So I like certain ideas. I would like to play video games and not grow old and have six-pack abs and whatever. And if I could like snap my fingers and get those things, that would be the moral thing, and preventing me from getting those things is the immoral thing. The pivoting point.
Why do you want those things?
Well, that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't make a difference.
Does it
Why?
not? Does it not? So, well, it does, because if you find that, like, for example, you wanted those things because you were, let's say let's say like you took a drug and it made you have an intense craving for apple juice, right? And you go and you finally find, like, actually, let's just make it like culturally relevant. What was it? You're Harold and Kumar. You're searching for White Castle. You need those White Castle burgers, right? So you're high as out. You're on this absolute mission for these White Castle burgers. But just as you get to the door, you sober up. So you manage to get your burgers, but you no longer desire them. Would you say that that would be still moral, or
As long as the preconditions were also chosen by you, it's perfectly moral. If someone forced you to want something against your will, then and that's why you want it, then that would of course be immoral. But as long as you chose them, or if it's part of like your natural determination of how you were made through nature or whatever, and it wasn't like pre-programmed by some evil demon, then yeah, it's perfectly fine. So
Yeah.
as long as it's just your nature and how you grew up and what your desires are, and those are the determining factors and what cause you to desire things, then that's all you need. You can just, as long as you
I mean,
fulfill those
what
desires.
I mean, what I don't understand is what the difference between nature and the evil demon would necessarily be, for one. Because they're just both pre-programming your action, aren't they? I mean, what's the difference?
Well, the evil demon could potentially pre-growing action in any way, which means it's not really your action; it's really its action.
But then you wouldn't know the
intentionality.
difference, just the same as you wouldn't know the difference.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't
between.
know the difference, but that's not the point. Is the point is that as long as it's your will isn't being determined by another acting source, another will of some kind.
But it's being determined by another. Oh, you mean like it's only as if it has a will of its own?
Right. So if
Right.
your will is being determined by another will, then it's not your will anymore. It's
Well, what's
determined
the
by.
difference between the determining? Why does the determining factor of it being another's will versus being a natural process have moral relevancy?
Because the moral relevancy of how you gain identity is because you're being developed through some natural process that really doesn't care about you. It has no skin in the game. It's not intentioning you to do anything. And so what gives you an identity is that you get a sense of identity, a sense of desire from that purely natural, unguided process that doesn't care about you. So that
Well, I mean,
that is
you'd gain the same identity from the evil demon. You would
no, because
just, you
that's
would just not be aware. Like it's the same. It's the same thing
no,
because if you
because
look,
that starts with the thing that has the evil demon has an identity already, and so you're getting an identity from an already existing identity. In the natural case, it doesn't have an identity. It doesn't have any desires or wills, and you're gaining those things from the natural process, which didn't have them. So they're a new function that is gained from the natural process, which makes it it's an individual process of you.
I mean, yeah, but if you look at it, it would still be the same content of your thoughts. It would still be the same content of your desires. It would be the same stuff going on in your head. Um, it could be all exactly the same as it is. You simply, not only could you not tell the difference, there wouldn't be a difference. Your ability to understand yourself would be equal. The only difference would be is that there was a vested interest in your construction. How does that change your identity?
It changes the morality of your identity. So it's immoral if a being programmed you a specific way without your consent. It would not be immoral for nature to just have created you and not had any direct intention. So that's the
Right.
difference. It's not your identity would still be you. You're still you.
Okay, so would you say that all forms of social conditioning were immoral?
Sort of no. So like social conditioning, like when someone tries to teach you stuff, as long as you're voluntarily a part of it, then it's totally moral. But if you're being
What if
forced
I
to do
teach
it,
my children, I don't have any children in case anyone's wondering, but let's say I had children. Let's say I taught my children not to put forks in plug sockets or knives in plug sockets, right? And they really wanted to put knives in plug sockets. Am I wrong?
in the best of all possible worlds, yes, that would be immoral. The only reason you're justified in doing that is because if you don't teach them that, if you don't impose on them that involuntary imposition of their will, they're going to have a much greater involuntary imposition of their will, which is the electricity is going to fry their brains pretty nicely. So
Okay.
so it's you are imposing on their will involuntarily, so it is immoral, but you're only doing it because
But
there's a greater one.
how could that possibly be doing them something immoral that they don't know about if it's purely acts of volition? How could it
What
be that I am imposing upon them? How could they, if they do not know that they do not want to be electrocuted, they might not understand the concept of electricity, for example. How is it that I can act on behalf of their will if they are ignorant to their own desire not to be electrocuted?
I'm not sure what you mean. So both it's still immoral. They don't know that they don't want to be electrocuted,
But I
but
mean, how is it less immoral? Like how is, like, for example, how am I acting morally? Like, so if I'm understanding, you're trying to say that by saving them, I'm doing something less bad.
yes.
Right. And I'm doing something less bad because they have a desire not to die.
Well, they have a desire not to feel pain, yeah.
Yeah, or pain. Yeah, either way. Um, and that desire they may be unaware of, is what I'm saying. For example, they may be unaware that electricity would harm them. They may be unaware that electricity, that they do not want to feel, that they do not want to die. They may not be aware that they of any of the consequences that could be negative overall in this scenario. And so, how can I say that I'm acting on behalf of their will if they are ignorant to their own desire in this scenario?
Well, their desire is just to stick the fork in the socket. Their desire isn't to stick the fork in the socket and get shocked or and have any consequences. So the consequences are actually contrary to their will, even if they don't know what they are.
But how can I say that if their will is purely volition?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
So if their will is to purely make a single, so if it's just the choices that we make, how can I say that if they've never thought about it, how could I say that their will would be to not be electrocuted?
Well, their will is because they can only imagine what they've already imagined. So if there's something else there that they haven't imagined or have no idea what it's going to be, that can't be a part of their will. So right now, their will is just to stick the fork in the socket. Now, if they
Right.
actually willed to stick the
So,
fork in the socket and get electrocuted, then it'd be moral to let them do that.
but like let's say like it's just to stick the fork in the socket, and I stop them. Um, I've done something wrong, as you say. That's in your ethics. But I've done something right if I stop them. At the same time, it's less wrong, right?
Yeah, you've done a wrong. You haven't done a right.
Why
You've done a
is it
wrong
less wrong?
because it's still an imposition on will. It's just a lesser imposition on will.
how is it an imposition on, like, for example, sorry, why wouldn't letting them do that be the moral thing in your framework, since there
It
is no
is.
will there to impose?
What?
So, for example, if you said that it would be the less,
So the moral thing to do is to let them stick the fork in the socket. That is the moral thing to do. It is
yeah, but
immoral to stop them. It's just less immoral than letting them die, than
right.
them
Why
die.
is
But
why is letting them die immoral if the consequences, if you're indifferent to the consequences? Because if they don't know the consequences, then they don't have a position on them. In which case, their
so you
will.
don't need a will to survive for it to be immoral to kill you. If you have a will to do anything and something stops you from doing that, it's immoral. So you don't need to think you want to live and then die to have it be immoral. So if I want to eat cookies and someone kills me, that's immoral because I can no longer eat cookies. I don't actually need to specifically desire to continue to live.
So are you making the Kantian point that the preservation of will is the most important fact, is an implicit is implicit within all of our wills? So like, if I will to do anything, I need to be alive to do anything. Therefore, my self-preservation is a matter of reason. I have to be alive here to will it.
Sort of. It's more like if I have a will to do something and you kill me, then you are imposing on my will involuntarily because I
Okay,
don't.
but then if I have a will to do something, and it kills myself, that's fine. Yeah.
That's fine. That's
That's fine.
as long as you
And
choose
then if
it.
I,
As
and
long
then
as
if I have a will, but then let's say I have a will to do something and then it kills me accidentally, is that also fine?
no, that's also immoral. But the immorality there is done by nature. So if, like, for example, if I want to stick a fork in a socket and I don't want to die, I just don't realize I'm going to die, and I get killed by it, that is immoral. That is an involuntary
What if
imposition on
I
my
don't
will.
know? So if I don't know I don't want to die, that's irrelevant because my desire itself is propagating towards the future, which implies a rational need for self-preservation.
What? No. So you should morally have the right to stick the fork in the socket. And if you die after sticking the fork in the socket, you have been immorally harmed, just like if someone killed you. So it is moral for you to stick the fork in the socket. It's immoral for you to be electrocuted against your will. But the immorality there is done by nature. So nature harmed you without your consent, which should be impossible in the best of all possible worlds.
Harmed you without your consent. I mean, the harm doesn't matter, doesn't it? Because it's the imposition of will. You said it was just
Well, yeah,
essentially getting
harm
in
is
the
an
way.
imposition of will. So if it
Yeah.
electrocutes you and kills you, it is imposed on your will involuntarily, which is harm.
But then doesn't everything in nature impose upon you involuntarily? All consequence?
No, because I like cheesecake. Cheesecake does not impose on me involuntarily. I am voluntarily imposing cheesecake on myself. But there are
So
many
let's
things
say you
that do.
choose to eat
Yes.
cheesecake, and let's say, but you cannot choose the sensation the cheesecake will bring you. You can only hope that it will bring you the sensation you desire. Yeah.
Right.
So
So as long as it's not rotten cheesecake, then
yeah, yeah. But then it has it, like, the whole point is that, like, nature itself is, like, is uncontrollable by the will. Like, we can control aspects of nature, but we cannot control nature itself. We can control our actions,
yet.
but we cannot control reality.
Right. So there's
Um,
many things in reality that we can't. Like I can't fly if I want to, and that's immoral. I can't get a six pack by snapping my fingers, so that's immoral. If we lived in the best of all possible worlds, we could do that. I could just snap my fingers, get a six pack. I could fly around. I could eat cheesecake and make it taste like blueberries if I wanted to. So in like just like the Matrix, we essentially would just be in the Matrix where we could just make anything do whatever we wanted it to do. So that would be the best of all possible worlds where we did have control over those things. The fact that we don't is horribly immoral. The fact that we are forced into this kind of a world where we can't fly if we want to, or where we can get killed and not have any choice in it, or be able to opt out of suffering. Those kinds of facts are horribly immoral about this world.
I mean, I will say, like, I mean, you're a determinist, so when you talk about immoral, like, outside of human action, I don't agree. I don't think morality applies to, for example, I don't think, like, a volcano exploding is necessarily immoral. A natural evil, maybe, in terms, and we could probably maybe meet somewhere there, but not immoral. I guess what I'd say is, it seems to me that when you're talking about the
Well, just to
imposition
clarify on
of,
that just a little bit more. So, because of the discoveries in neurology that there is no free will at all. It's all pretty determined by neurology. If that is the case, if we assume we are purely determined, then the word morality shouldn't refer to this mythical idea of free volition stuff because it doesn't exist. It's completely farcical. I think it's logically impossible. So what we should
actually on my lap is a book called Free Will and Continental Philosophy, and by David Rose. Really good book. Basically, my position on morality there, if anyone's interested, and I would absolutely disagree with the idea of neurology even nearly informing anything on free will. I think that the concept of free will is epistemically prior to science. I think that science, as a form of investigation, requires the notion of free will to function. I would say that for example, the foundations of science and language even require an ethical relationship with the other, in which one sees the other as being able to choose, act, and able to make validate, verify, and falsify each other's behaviors. And that is the very basis of deduction. And without that, we wouldn't have the possibility of of science. So when we're trying to apply something like determinism to and causation rather to humanity, what we're actually doing is we're making an epistemic flaw, because we're trying to say that the conclusion is actually prior to the epistemic foundations which allowed us to institutionally come to that conclusion. That would be my argument about it. I'd say that the problem of free will is actually the problem of free will. There is no problem there. It's just it's a mistake in language. But it's fair if people want to disagree. We can talk about it at some point. But
but just to clarify, so if there is no free will, then what we mean by morality has nothing to do with choice. It's all about different determined processes, and we should use the word morality to refer to something more like imposition on your will, regardless of whether or not it's free. That's why that's why the term morality for me includes natural evils, because that's more what morality is.
I understand. Yeah, I get why it does make sense if you take that position. Like what you're doing is you're making a descriptivist case on morality. But I think one, I would say that it's not as if you're doing anything but describing your own emotional states. Then, yeah.
Sort of. That wouldn't be emotional states, because you can have different emotional states from the actions. So the actions or the choices could have various emotional effects on you. It wouldn't necessarily be the emotional states.
But why do you act? You just do? You do?
Neurology determines my actions.
So in neurology, what is the action urging process in your brain?
Neurotransmitters firing.
Okay, and that's but you experience it as...
most of it you don't experience. Most of it's post hoc, so you don't actually experience any of it. Emotions are after the fact.
I mean, the evidence for that is shoddy at best. Because
ironclad vast majority in neurology of experts in neurology, psychology, cognitive science, and philosophy. It's pretty ironclad. But
neurologists don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to read the brain, for one, not properly. And then even if we do talk about, let's say, the intentional states beginning before conscious processes, like psychological experiments, they don't take account of urges. They don't take account of psychological variations. They don't take account of the concept of vetoing, and even even if it is a subconscious intentional state that is propagated forward, it then doesn't imply hard determinism anyway. So
well, I'm not sure. There's several different things you mentioned there. One, hard determinism as a metaphysical claim about reality isn't what the physicalism about the brain is claiming. So it's not making the larger claim that everything is determined just because the brain is determined. It's just making the claim that our mental actions are determined by physical processes in the brain, regardless of what about ultimate determinism is irrelevant to the position. But there's different kinds of tests we can do for that in the brain. One would be like the future prediction test of, say, pick right or left, and we can just look at your brain and know which one you're going to pick before you do. And that's a pretty good basis based on future testable predictions. But there's a better one, which is we can literally zap your brain and make you do stuff or feel stuff or think stuff just by zapping your brain, and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's like, I can make you feel hot by putting you in a hot room. I can make you do something like I know that the test.
Well, there's another one. The third one. There's a third one. just wanted to finish my point there. There's a third one which we can damage part of your brain, and then you lose the ability to do that completely. Whatever part of that brain was, like your Phineas Gage case.
Yeah, well, I mean that's fair enough, but all it does is actually show, like, if we look at it, like, all it does is show that, like, you can control, like, one, from what I'm aware, like, we've done a lot of this on rats. Like, for example, basically attached a toy car steering wheel to a rat and basically made it run around. Um, that really doesn't show whether the rat experiences free will, like, has the experience of being in control of themselves, or is experiencing an overriding force upon their body. So, like, whether it's actually able to change their mental state is separate. So, for example, what I would say you are, and I think you would agree, would be the consciousness which resides in your body. You're not just simply the body. So if you were to, let's say, have, let's say, brain damage to the point in which you lost consciousness, like your entire current consciousness was destroyed and replaced with a new person who's still identified as TJump, that wouldn't be you anymore. Yeah.
Um, I go with the consensus with neurology on that one. So it's literally your brain is you. I don't know.
But
Like,
if your brain, like, the thing is that, like, I think that this is, I think we're going to have a problem with identity one, because I don't think your brain is you. Because if your brain, like, how long do you think you survive for then? Like about 24 seconds?
well, so depends on how you define the identity. So if you are just the process that is produced by the brain, and the brain is a bunch of particles, as long as the brain is intact, then you exist because you're just the process produced by the brain. So there's no problem of identity there unless you're trying to define identity as specifically just the conscious state that you have, which deteriorates every tenth of a millisecond.
Yeah, there's like, I think Strawson says that, like, maybe it's every 24 seconds we'll have like a quite there's a point in which something changes in terms of the energy in your brain as well. And then, then you've got, like, when you go to sleep and you wake up the next day, is that just like a RAM restart, just bang, you're an entirely different consciousness. um I suppose I would say that, like, obviously, a form of psychological continuity, it's not necessarily a problem if identity is something that is separate from your perceptual awareness alone. Um, and it's just not the same. The energy moving through your brain doesn't define who you are. What defines who you are is a linguistic concept which travels through you through time and allows you to have, like I was, you know, uh, you know, at little earlier, I am here now and I will be somewhere else in the future. All of which are the same person because they're held constant by self-awareness, which is, the concept of I, which is linguistically embedded and applied to this form, which then goes and acts in the world. In which case, there's no real problem there, like, in terms of, like psychological continuity. Of course, what leads us to ask is, like, are you then purely acting upon um the it's not about then the expression of it's not is it about the expression of current desire, or is it or can you, for example, have a desire for something, um like, would you associate with desires in the past as well? Would you say that, like, those are also your desires, or is it just anything immediate? It seems that your idea of volition, like your idea of freedom, is pure preference, and I think this is where we kind of disagree. I would say that freedom is self-determination. I think that to be unrestricted is not freedom. To be purely able to get whatever you want at any time you want, whenever you want it, is not freedom. That's to be determined by your, like, nature, by your environment, by the thoughtless processes which govern the desire propagation, or even the lack of self-governing uh, contemplation you have over yourself. You may allow your desires to run free. I would say that volition, like, Sartre, we are condemned to be free in that respect. Yeah, fair enough. I understand what you're saying. Like, you cannot get past your own volitional state in the fact that it is you, quote unquote, linguistically acting. Of course, I think that we have a very different understanding of that. I would say that it is actually you who are acting, and you would say that it's a bodily process, which we just describe as you. Um, I don't think ethics is actually a well-fitting concept for this. I think you'd be better off describing it in physics. or or in another science than philosophy. I don't think a philosophical concept actually works in this. If humans were to were to be physical objects of investigation, I think the application of philosophy in this respect of ethics is unfitting. And I think what would make a better an explanation for this, and I would argue that it's actually the other way around, that causation is unfitting. But long story short, why unrestricted freedom is not freedom. I would say that you can intend to do something and not intend for the results, or not know that or intend for, or that there is an implicit intention in your actions that you are unaware of. So, in other words, Ayn Rand says a whim is a desire in which the desirer does not care to know the cause. I would say that within our very nature, there is an implicit goal in mind, a telos. I would say that, like, and it unites all desire. I would say that all desire holds within it a goal to achieve a good life, happiness, pleasure, avoid pain. All of these are built in to our nature, that we, by nature, have been given a set criteria of what we want and what we do not want, and what is good for us and what is not good for us. What I would say that we can do then is we can analyze whether our desires actually create the world in which we wanted to live in the first place, and whether we could be aware that what we wanted was wrong against what we actually wanted to bring around. You talk about the best of all possible worlds. Can we not be mistaken about what that looks like? So if I was to say to you, what is the best of all possible worlds, what would you say?
A world without involuntary imposition of will, where everyone gets to define their own nature of reality.
Okay, that's very abstract, yeah?
Well,
What does it
yes, it's the
actually look
best of all
like?
possible worlds. Like what?
So,
Or do you
so
mean
it's
like?
like so it's like, and it's abstract though, isn't it? Like, so everyone gets to do everything that they want to do at all times, right?
Well, no. So
Yeah.
you can't do everything you want to do. Like you can't impose on someone else's will without their consent, no matter how much you want to. It's only everyone gets their own universe. You can do whatever you want with your universe. Describe the world, the rules, however you want, laws of physics or whatever, and then you can't. But you can never force anyone else to do anything they don't consent to,
Why?
because that's immoral.
Why is it immoral?
Because it's involuntary imposition of will. That
Why is
would
that
be because it would move us away from the best of all possible worlds.
circular?
All reasoning, Agrippa's trilemma, all reasoning rests on circular reasoning, every rests or dogmatism. If I'm saying it's true by definition, that would be circular, but the circular, just by giving a definition, is a tautology. It's not circular. So it'd only be circular reason if I'm saying it's
What the thing is an unjustified tautology. Like tautology is circular but true.
no.
So
It's
for
the difference
example,
between it's the difference between the synthetic and the analytic distinction. If I'm saying it's analytically true, then it's circular. If it's only true by definition because I'm using the definitions, then yes.
Why is it you would need to show that it could not be that it would be irrational for it.
No. I can just say
it must be the case. You have to show
no, I don't. No, I
be the
don't.
case.
No, I can say it's
Yes,
synthetically true. I can say it's
No, you have to
describing.
say,
No, I don't. No, I don't. You're misunderstanding how the truth works.
You cannot, like, for example, I cannot go, the sky is green, and that'll be synthetic, right? But let's say I was to say, like, all, I don't know, so you'll say the best of all possible worlds is the greatest expression of the will, and right. So if I was just to create a definition, like, the greatest happiness is whatever I want it to be, or like the greatest happiness is when I am happy. Well, what makes it the greatest? Well, what makes it, like, what makes the greatest happiness the greatest happiness? Because I'm happy. And then I was to say, like, well, you say, well, what makes you happy the greatest happiness? And you just go, because it's the greatest happiness. That's asserted. It's asserted without.
No, you're confusing analytic and synthetic truths here. So if you ask me what do I mean,
I know analytic truth is true by definition. It is
Right.
true because it must be the case.
Right. So,
Like a triangle must have
again,
three sides.
let me finish the statement this time. So
Sorry.
again, I'm saying it's true because it refers to something in the world like a Platonic object. If a Platonic object of our Platonic morality is true, then this definition, if it corresponds to that thing, is true. I can give you what I mean by these terms, but it's true because it refers to the object in the world, which makes it a synthetic truth. And the definitions don't matter. All the definitions are just describing this thing. So it's not true because I'm using the definitions. It's true because it refers to a thing in the world.
Okay, so you're arguing that there is an ontologically objective fact that is that
Yes.
the best of all possible worlds, right? And how do I identify that fact?
No idea. We're still working on it. Like the best we got
How
right
would
now
you
is
identify that fact?
yeah. So the best we got right now is moral intuition, moral progress. Looking at those things, we can draw a line, dotted graph, see if where does it lead, and see if intuit that this thing might be there.
So that's an assertion.
No, I don't think so. Like it's just.
But I mean, it's an intuition without grounding. So it's a unless you're trying to say that there, like, for example, it sounds like you're trying to kind of do a GE Moore, good is good.
No, absolutely not. So again, this is exactly like science. Like we see stuff fall, we see it fall at a consistent rate. Let's infer, well, based on this, what is it causing stuff to fall? It's, well, I have no idea, but here's the rate at which it falls. F equals ma. What is ontologically, what is the stuff that causes it to fall? Like Newton, I have no idea. I'm just looking at the evidence, trying to create a principle that describes what we're seeing. Now, so I don't actually say anything about the ontology of what morality is, but I can tell you if it is a thing that in the world, like a Platonic object or whatever, then the truth maker isn't the words. The words I'm describing at the F equals ma. That's all circular because there's an equal sign there. Just this word means this word. So if I say immoral is involuntary imposition of will, it's the exact same thing as saying F equals ma. And so if you ask, what do I mean by ma? Well, I mean F. And so obviously that's going to be circular, but that's not what makes it true. The truth maker is the fact that
actually it would be. I mean, physics is as ostensive, so you'd point towards you'd be like, I mean that.
Yes.
Momentum. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm doing the same thing with morality. So when I say something is moral, I'm that thing is the moral thing, and what I'm referring to is like moral intuition and moral progress. So the two evidence.
What would you point to? So if I was to say momentum, I would point to an object moving. What would you point to with morality?
Moral intuition and moral progress. Those are the two evidences.
So moral intuition, that can be a sense. That's just a sense, yeah?
Yes.
So it's like my seeing, like, for example, if I see an object move, but there was no object there, has the object actually existed? Like if I hallucinated?
No, that's a delusion.
Okay. And why couldn't we have a en masse delusion about morality?
We could. That's definitely a possibility.
Okay. So again, like there's a 50-50 chance that it could be really just as a construction of culture, language.
There's lots of different possibilities of what it could be. There's many different interpretations in philosophy about the solution to objective morality. Mine is just a hypothesis like any other. Just like in quantum mechanics, you have like 10 different interpretations of physics. It's not like it's not like we have a 50-50 on any of them. They're all just guesses. So none of them are right.
Difference is that those fields have like ontological foundation in terms of where you can point towards at least a physical reality which has metaphysical grounding.
No, they don't. Physics doesn't make any kinds of assertions about that at all. So
I mean, for physics to even function, it has to rely upon the concept that a physical exists.
No, it doesn't. It's not a part of physics.
Okay, so you don't think that so you think that physics could function exactly the same if there was no such thing as a physical world?
Yeah, that's the brain in the vat argument.
Yeah, but brain in the vat would imply that there is a physical reality.
The brain in the vat argument is a
reality implying laws of physics in like a kind of computer simulation. It would be like there are laws, but they're describing something different from what we are aware of. That's like
all right. That's not the point. The point of the wait. So the point of the brain in the vat argument is a class of arguments that show everything we know about reality could be wrong, like Descartes' demon. So in Descartes' demon, we have a perspective of reality.
Was wrong anyway.
Descartes was not wrong about that. Descartes was wrong about idealism. But the point is that everything we know could be wrong, and it only works in the sense that we perceive it to work. So it's possible physics isn't describing anything. It's just an imaginary construct in our heads, and that there is no physical world. Idealism is true. That's one of the things idealists argue, is that physics works perfectly fine, even though there is no physical world. It's just idealism and stuff. There's no contradiction there.
What I mean is that like what physics is describing is implied within the metaphysical. Like there is an epistemological foundation for what physics is necessarily able to function as in that we are experiencing a physical world. That whether it is physical or not, like in terms of like ultimately like the physical reality is indifferent to how physics functions. Fair enough, but in terms of like how the necessary conditions from which physics is reliant, physics would not function the way it does as a deductive field if it was shown that physical objects did not exist in the way in which we are experiencing them. The field would actually have to modify and change, which does happen, and institutions do modify and they do grow, and you see like modifications from like alchemy to science, for example, and like the improvements of like various fields. But like in terms of the foundations, like the metaphysical foundations for physics, they're implicit within the and even the epistemological foundations for physics in terms of how our reasoning functions.
No,
when you're talking about Descartes there.
So that was the same thing you said earlier about that free will was the underpinnings of science and those things. That's absolutely false. Like science makes no metaphysical ontological claims about reality at all. It just assumes them.
How would we choose, like for example, how would we act within a field, right? Like wait a minute. See, I've actually got to see if I can get you a quote. I'll get you a nice quote. See if I actually took it down.
You could just go through it by memory. I'll probably.
Yeah, well, it's not that big of a deal. But I think I was going to quote Heidegger. But the point of I guess what I was trying to get is like what is called the fittingness of the concept. I think Heidegger calls it, and it's essentially like the epistemological like science cannot assert its own foundation, right? Like
science doesn't care about the foundation. That's the point. The metaphysics is irrelevant to science.
No, because
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like, look at it like this, right? Like, right. Can science assert that deduction is actually the deductive method, the scientific method, is true without having to give an argument of why we should be deductive?
Science doesn't use a deduction; it uses induction.
Well, it uses both, and it uses deduction in terms of peer review and so on, and it uses induction in terms of like the sun rising, and it kind of bases its conclusions off perceptual reason and then moves on. But it doesn't use induction purely, at least not in my experience of science.
Do you mean by peer reviewed? People look at it and see if the conclusion follows from the premises? Is that what you mean by they're using deduction?
I would say that the conclusion follows from the premises is deduction, and that the conclusion presupposes is induction. The conclusion being presupposes induction.
Conclusion being, well, that wouldn't be induction. That's presupposition.
No, induction is the conclusion being attempted to be proven, and then you search for the evidence. Deduction is finding evidence and then attempting to come to a conclusion.
Well, that would be post hoc reasoning versus future predictions. So deduction is where the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises, and induction is where it's just probably follows from the premises. So
yeah, but like in terms of method, induction would be to stipulate a conclusion and attempt to find evidence, and deduction would be find evidence and then stipulate a conclusion.
All science is look at evidence and then stipulate a conclusion. So
yeah, I would call that deductive, and Karl Popper would also call that deductive. That's what I'm kind of going off.
Okay, so by deductive, I'm just using the strict philosophical sense of the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. So in science, it's always you look at evidence, then try and make a conclusion, for sure.
Yeah, which is what I would say. That's how science, like that. I would say science is trying to do that when it's using the scientific method. It's looking at evidence and then looking at the conclusion.
Definitely.
In which case, I'd say that deduction only works through the ethical relationship between individuals.
Ethical relationship between individuals, like there could be no individuals except me in the universe, and I could still use science.
No, your own reasoning would be you'll be unable to verify or falsify your own reasoning.
Don't need to. I don't need absolute certainty.
You could see like even your ability to conceptualize reality would be impossible. I would say that, like, for example, what holds concept, like for example,
so let's
do you know anything about Wittgenstein?
Some, like his book, the Tractus Philosophica, whatever.
The Tractatus, yeah. What about the Philosophical Investigations? Have you ever?
Yeah, this is one of his other ones.
Yeah, that was the one after, right? So the Tractatus is like science is like for like absolutely like everything is an atomistic fact. the philosophical investigations is essentially like Wittgenstein coming back saying that everything he said in the Tractatus was wrong. Some people seem to think that they're compatible, but really it's a very, very sharp distinction from the Tractatus. Essentially, what he's trying to say is that like concepts function in a way, and this is also Peter Gitsch. There's a great book if anyone's interested in it, called Mental Acts and Their Objects. It's like a really thin book. It's like philosophy of mind. It's interesting stuff. It's not easy, but it's interesting. And he talks about why abstractionism, as in, for example, if I look at a wall and I see that it's white, I gain the concept of whiteness is actually inadequate to explain how language and conceptualization functions, and that it's actually more adequate to say that I actually create the concept of whiteness and apply it to the wall, and the color, and for it to function logically as it does. Now,
but wait, let's go back to what you said. Like, I can do science in all conceptualization with no reference to any other human being ever. Like, there was at one point one mind, one consciousness that existed in the universe, and it started this whole process of making associations. You don't need other minds to do that. You don't need other minds to form a language. You don't need other minds to do any of that.
Are you arguing for God there?
No, I'm just being like a single organism, that the first brain that ever existed in the world.
But wait a minute, what? Wait, we'll get onto that in a second.
Because you said you needed reference to other people to make sense of like how
physical reality or reality as a whole, ontological reality.
Right, yeah. And so I'm saying you don't. If there was at one point there was a single brain in the universe and it was doing all of this stuff without any other brains. Like, you don't need reference to any other human being. Like, there are many cases where there is a single human being who lives like in a forest on their own, or who was like abandoned, and their brain is working just fine to make these associations without reference to any other human beings. You don't need that at all to do science. You don't need that at all to do conceptualization.
They're not incapable of inducing a concept. I'm just saying they're incapable of understanding their own concept. They're incapable of forming deductive arguments, is what I'm saying.
What? Like, that makes no sense.
I'll explain in a sec. So, like, the whole point of what I was referring to is a guy called Wittgenstein, and the reason I was referring to him is because he argues that language cannot be private. So,
right, the private language argument, but that's wrong.
It's not wrong.
It is definitely wrong.
Do you think it's wrong? Why do you think it's wrong?
Because you can make a private language all you want. Like, all you have to do is reference objects. Like, I can say that as blah, 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 blah. And it's
yeah,
fine.
and then what's the private language argument arguing?
That the reference to what you're speaking can't have meaning without it being able to be conveyed to other people, something like
that. It's not, but kind of, but like, I think that like it's overly simplified. So but like, essentially what it's actually saying is that grammar, that the linguistic framework of something like English, Russian, whatever it may be, is actually holding our conceptualizations in between multiple minds so that we can have a referential point in which we go, if I go blur and I point at that object, and then I go blur and point at that object, or I go, that's a cat and that's a cat, and they're two separate objects that have no ontological similarities, for example, but I've forgotten, for example, that I said it about the other object, I would be incapable of knowing which was not a cat. I would be something could be both A and not A at the same time. They both be P and not P at the same time. We cannot hold. You run into essentially like it becomes incoherent, because there'll be no standard from which to reference our capacities for conceptualization. The whole point of something being for the whole point of the private language argument and saying that it's impossible to have a private language is to say that it simply could not function in the sense of being coherent. You would be incapable of knowing whether your interpretation of the word was the same or different to any other point in time, even in the same sentence, because your interpretation of the word would be the standard from which the word was used. They would be both the same. You could never use a word wrong.
But that's the same thing as Gödel's incompleteness theorem of logic, is that any logical system can't be shown to be internally consistent without reference to an external logic. I mean, that's true of all knowledge. You don't need that absolute certainty.
What you say with logic, it's like what Wittgenstein, I think, does adequately show. And I think what even Aristotle kind of points out, it's impossible to think illogically. Logic is a function function of our mind. It simply cannot be rejected. You would have to reject logic. You would have to reject the very thing from which gives you the concept of being able to reject it. You are
Well,
using it implicitly.
that wasn't the point I was making. So the point I was making is that that same problem applies to logic, yet we can still use logic. You don't need to have absolute certainty. You don't need to have that kind of basis of knowing.
But it's not about absolute certainty in that respect. I understand that, but it's about the logic is necessary, and it's the only concept that is necessary. It's impossible.
I wasn't arguing against logic here. My argument is for language. Even though the same problem can apply to logic, we don't reject logic. We can use the same reasoning to say, even though this problem applies to language, if I'm alone on an island and I use a word to refer to a tree or whatever, even though I can't be certain that the next 5 seconds I'm using the word to refer to something else, doesn't matter. I can still have some reasonable level of confidence just because of how my brain works. I can still say that the word I used, blah, still refers to the same tree and be reasonably certain that I'm meaning the same thing just based off my personal experience without any reference to any other person. I don't
but then let's say like you were to develop a private language, right? And you think about the range of complexity in which you could actually hold these concepts, even just in pure memory. You would overwhelm yourself quite quickly. At least I know I would overwhelm myself quite quickly.
What do you mean?
And my capacity for remembering its correct application or not would be impossible. So if I say to you something is analytically true, so for example, a bachelor is an unmarried man, how would I know that was the case if I am not able? Like, the point of it being analytically true is not to say that we have assumed that a bachelor is an unmarried man. What we have actually done is we have identified a bachelor as being an unmarried man. We have shown that they are the same thing, applied concepts, and held them in a language game, in which holds the usage the same. Now, if someone comes along and says a bachelor is a married man, would you say they were wrong?
No, they can define it any way they want. They're both right.
But then there's no such thing as right and wrong because logic doesn't function anymore.
No, logic functions just fine. It's just the meaning of the words is different between different people.
All deduction then is assumed. There is no rational argumentation that they can go premise A, premise B, premise C, A, B, C, and then actually show that it functions in that way. It would just be an implicit assumption.
I'm not understanding your point here. So language is arbitrary. Any word can mean anything you want it to mean. So if I mean by bachelor an unmarried man and that guy means by bachelor a married man, we can both be right because the language is arbitrary. It doesn't make a difference.
Okay, right. Okay. Look, right. But for logic, would agree that for logic to function, we'll have to identify metaphysically separate, at least nominally, separate objects. Yeah, like A, B, C. Yeah. And then show logical inferences of, like, for example, they are not the same object. They cannot be anything but themselves. You'd have to show, the law of identity, maybe the law of non-contradiction, depending upon your interpretation of it, and so on. You'd be happy with that, yeah?
I think so. I'm not sure.
If I was to say that, so if I was to try and make an argument, and I was to say that, at one point, all swans are black, right? And that's a black swan, therefore, was it all swans are black? I don't know. I really like the color black, therefore I really like swans or something. I don't know. Anyway. I should have just went with the Socrates as a man one, but whatever, right? If I was to say that, right, I'm relying upon a level of deduction in which the words actually in each premise correspond to the same object, in which I go that the word swan and the word black and black, no matter who reads this argument, it would flow the same because it shows a logical.
You want to use the words to mean the same thing in each sentence.
Yeah. And if they don't, then it wouldn't function.
It wouldn't be an argument. It would just be PQR.
Yeah, exactly. And that means that language has to be held constant, because if it wasn't, then anyone who reads it would interpret it separately without without any, like there would be no way for
Right.
them to hold it constant.
Right.
Yeah.
So if language continued meaning to continue change in
No, well,
sufficient.
language can change, but the grammar would have to change with it. Like, for example, you could have a language community evolving over time. That's fine.
So
But it
for
would just be
example, like we could have the word gay. If we said it in the 1920s, we said that man is gay, and conclude he is therefore homosexual. That sentence would not make sense to someone in like the 1850s, because then the word 1850s gay meant happy, not
yeah,
homosexual.
I agree.
So
No,
language,
because they're from a different language community.
right? So language does change. That's not a problem. The fact that
Yeah,
language
language
can
changes.
change.
It can be relative and change within a community, but it cannot be individualistic and change within a person's mind. Because if it was dependent upon their interpretation, they wouldn't be able to show whether their interpretation was actually correct or not. There'd be no way to verify or falsify whether their reasoning was functioning adequately or not.
Right.
So, like, everyone would be capable of asserting the truth with equal merit upon a claim, regardless of evidence.
Right. So I can just, again, so logic is a language that describes reality. Reality exists prior to logic. So when I say that is blah, or whatever, that tree is blah, and I 5 minutes later I come back and say, oh, look, it's blah, I'm assuming that I mean the same thing by the words, but I don't need to know with absolute certainty that I do. I can just assume that they mean the same thing, and I still
There's a
justify.
difference between absolute certainty and even having the possibility of verification or falsification. If it's unfalsifiable that you are using the word adequately, then this is so there would be no way of even asserting that you are using the word right, because you would be referencing only your consciousness in a given moment right now at each point. You'd be like, you wouldn't even like, so for example, if I walk past the tree and I go like tree, and then I come back and I go tree, and the tree is a private word that I've made up and not something held constant within English or Russian or whatever the hell language we want to put it in. Then in each scenario, all I'm doing is pointing at an object and naming it tree, because the standard doesn't exist. It's simply my consciousness, which is I'm relying upon myself to hold it still. It becomes subjective. Truth then
it's still
would
subjective.
become subjective.
It's still subjective, even in a larger culture with lots of people. It's just contingent on the group instead of the individual.
But you not see how truth would be subjective in this scenario in terms of if we're
no, I'm saying the same thing applies to the society. The number of consciousnesses make no difference to the argument. It's always going to be like, we don't know with absolute certainty that is going to be the case. It's always that.
That's what we rely upon is probability, right?
Yes. So there's not a problem there. There isn't a problem there. I can be alone and call that tree and then be confident that it's still tree when I come back. That's perfectly reasonable. I have no issues there. There's no logical problem there, even if I don't have absolute certainty in that case, or what I call absolute certainty. You don't need that. What you're talking about isn't a problem. Like, yes, you're right. I can't be certain, but I can be reasonably confident that when I come back and say tree, even though that's just a word I made up in my head, it still refers to the same thing. I can still have confidence in that, even though I can't
to know whether you're using the same bloody
I don't
word.
need to. I don't need to. I can have confidence. I don't need to know.
Yeah, but your confidence is irrelevant to the truth. If we were to say the truth is a thing, what you've done is you've destroyed truth. You've made it subjective.
No, I haven't. It's
Yes,
called fallibilism in philosophy. You don't
it's
need. It is.
I'm a fallibilist. This isn't fallibilism.
Yes, it is. That's the argument you're making. Is you can't have certainty that what you mean by those is there. That's essentially the argument.
Actually, this would require, for this to function the way it does, you'd have to have something more similar to infallibilism, in which I could assert that my definition would remain constant because of my brain holding a constant, that there is a necessary factor which holds a constant for it to actually function. It would be like this way actually destroys the possibility of truth. It's not about like,
no, it doesn't.
It does. It does.
Not. It's because truth, I heard the correspondence theory of truth. Truth is that if a sentence corresponds to reality, it's true. And so if what you mean by the sentence is that tree, and that tree exists and it corresponds to reality, the sentence is true.
Yeah, but like the words you use, for example, are universals, right? So if you're using a universal, for example, like tree, everything that's not ostensive is a universal pretty much, right? Yeah. So like tree, desk, like chair, whatever applies to, since you're using Platonic forms as well, I suppose you agree, like universal concepts or forms within reality, right? In which I reference
I'm more of a nominalist. I don't think there's any universals, but.
Well, so you don't think there's any universals at all?
In reference to language and objects in those kinds of sense, not as much, without like several exceptions like laws of logic, that kind of thing. But that's a different conversation.
Okay, so if I was to say a desk, you wouldn't say that was a universal?
Not necessarily. I'd say try to define to me a desk. Give me a single definition of desk that can apply to all desks and doesn't exclude any non-desks or excludes all non-desks. Like the chair argument, you know.
Yeah, I know the argument. I guess the issue is that like, and then someone obviously you try and reference a chair that has like, um,
Postmodernist chairs.
yeah, exactly. This is this is the whole. But postmodernists don't believe in truth. This is,
So yeah, I believe in truth. I believe truth is that.
I don't understand where to place you because you're making quite bold meta narratives.
You don't have to place me anywhere. You forget about me. Just
narratives. You're like, nah. Foundation.
Yeah, you don't need to place me. You just need to place the argument. So the argument is that we can have language perfectly coherently fine on our own in a secluded island with no other reference of no humans. There's no problem with that. In fact, it's literally happened in history multiple times.
Well, like individuals have constructed their own private language and it functioned not as the same deductively with a language. I mean, like one, I don't think that's actually one. Like, I don't know whether it's possible to even to know whether that's true or not without actually finding someone on an island. Like, I think there was I think Chomsky talked about this, didn't he? He talked about like the forbidden experiment kind of thing, like a girl being wild and how it would affect our linguistic development. But like,
Yeah, we have cases of those. There's actually one in Russia where there was actually that happened.
I would go so far to argue that your ability, if you were to put a child in the wild, I don't think they would develop self-consciousness, self-awareness in the way that we function right now.
Develop self-awareness, like because for me, self-awareness is just conscious experience. So that's what I mean by self-awareness. What do you mean?
I mean, self-awareness is being aware of oneself through time, psychological continuity, the ability to refer to oneself as an I, an object of one's own experience.
Right. So we would definitely have less cognitive abilities because we have lots of tools that we get from other uses of language that we wouldn't otherwise have that definitely make more associations in the brain. But those came from somewhere. They had to have developed in human history from an individual with a brain. They couldn't like just have, there's in your system where it requires multiple brains to have essentially adopted these things at the same time and refer to themselves in order to come up with the concepts, then it's impossible for them to have ever come about if there was a first brain.
To say that the first words were birthed out of induction is fine. Like they were just induced poof out of nowhere. That's fine. Like I get it. Like the first ever words, like someone just went Bleh! Like slap. Like Wittgenstein actually gives this at the start of his the philosophical investigations actually, and he's just like someone just says slab and just points at a rock. You know, what does that mean? And he starts talking about how the different interpretations of the other tribes people and trying to work out whether they mean the same thing and all these different things, like talk about numbers and the development of numerical systems and the basic alphabet and shit like that. Like, I get it, right? Like it would be out of nowhere, someone just goes like that, like they make a noise, a click, or whatever it may be, and then they point towards ostensibly towards an object, and then you have a referential point for the other individual to pick up, and then they would then run with it. The point is that obviously each of our brains think logically, at least rationally, in the sense that we all are incapable of thinking of something of being A and not A simultaneously. In terms of the laws of logic, actually all function within our minds. I don't think either of us disagree with that, do they?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool.
So go back to your original example. Like if we have someone in the forest and hears a noise like a branch falling or whatever, and that branch has a fruit on it or whatever, and he eats the fruit, and then he associates that sound of the branch falling to the fruit, and then anytime he hears that sound or makes like tries to replicate it, then he now has a private language of that cracking noise or whatever means food. And so anytime you hear that cracking noise, you're going to think of food. And so now he has a private language with no one else. No one else is referenced here. He's just associating the sound to the sensation of food. And that's perfectly fine.
I mean, like there's a bell ringing, like if like Pavlov's dogs. I don't think that's a language. I wouldn't say that the dogs have developed a language if they salivate, even if it was a conscious realization that they should run through.
That's what language is. That's all how language all formulated in human beings is that they associated.
Language is able to, for example, you could not ring a bell and various forms of bells and then it turn into deduction. Like language has to like for deduction and verification and falsification to function, we require other agents who are able to understand these things at the same standard as ourselves, and for us to be able to understand these things in the future to exactly the same standard, so that we can hold a notion of like truth is required to be constant. It's required to be held constant. If it was constantly developing, in the sense constantly what would be the best word, like a self-deforming cast, like something that is constantly in flux, it wouldn't be truth anymore. If it was to be, it can change, it can develop, and it can grow, and we can find that we were wrong and that there are new things that are right, and we can develop. That's fair enough. We can start off with inductive, like, blah, and then like, that's blah, that's not blah, and then we can create inferences from that because of the way our minds work, um in terms of, like, together, and then we can have conceptual growth from that. So if someone, let's say you pointed at a tree and went blah, right, and what you meant was that all trees are blah, and then somebody else pointed at a tree and went blah, they get that, they mean trees are blah. But then later on you point at a bush and you go blah, right, because you don't differentiate the metaphysical differences between a bush and a tree, right, but the other people in the tribe go not blah, right. Conceptual growth occurs within you when you are forced into uh recognizing the metaphysical differentiation between a tree and a bush.
Right. But you can do that without other people. You don't need other people for that. You just need to refer to reality. So, for example, if I say tree cracking equals fruit, and then I say, oh, water running equals fruit, and I go to the water, there's no fruit there, then, oh, I now have conceptual growth because I associate this sound to fruit and not this sound to fruit.
Not necessarily. I mean, like, for one, like,
that's literally how language developed in humanity.
Well, I mean, that's a pure assertion, because we do not know necessarily how language developed in humanity.
Yeah, we do. We can see it happening in different kinds of species of animals. Lots of tests that we develop language in animals.
I don't think that we can say that, like, for example, like, even if we were to say that, like, in terms of, we might be running on different definitions of language as well, which is probably causing an issue. But, like, if I was to say that, like, for example, someone runs over to here's a tree cracking and associate, where was it, like, sound image association, I wouldn't call that language. But then, even if, like, they had sound image association on a really complex scale, and there was nothing holding it constant so that it could communicate even with itself the meaning, if it could not hold meaning constant, then for example, this is a rock, and understand rock holds a certain thing, and which relates to one's own experiences and blah blah blah. Like, if it could not hold that constant, then I wouldn't say it was a language. If it wasn't able to make sure that the meaning was actually being transmitted.
Right. I would agree, but I'm saying there is a way for it to maintain the meaning, which is that when it
direct relation.
Yeah, direct senses experience. Like, I can see the fruit.
So, like, Russell.
What?
So, like, Bertrand Russell.
I'm not sure. I don't really care enough about other people's philosophies to try and research into them.
So, like, Bertrand Russell has, like, he argues a very similar thing. But then in this case, you also find some problems with this. So, for example, when a blind man uses the word, I see what you did there. Say if he says a phrase like, I see what you did there, and the word see actually relates to the capacity for sight, has the blind man used the word see properly? Has he used it?
Only if he used it in coherence with what he means by it, yes.
Right. And like, so how would he know that he's used it properly?
If what he means by it is what he used it, then yes, then he used it properly. Like, all that matters is his self-referential thing.
Let's just get to that. What is truth?
Truth is whether a sentence corresponds to reality. Correspondence theory of truth.
Okay. True justified belief, would you say, like, as in
that'd be knowledge. Knowledge is,
yeah, that'd be knowledge. True justified belief. So, but then to say something was true, if it says it corresponds to reality,
yeah,
how would you show that it corresponds to reality? Would it just be perceptual?
That would be how we go about showing it. Like, that's inductively.
I think that's, for the most cases, I would agree that truth is primarily perceptual. Okay, and then knowledge would be, you would agree, would be true justified belief, yeah?
Yeah.
So can he have knowledge of whether he used the word correctly?
That's arbitrary. Like, his usage of the word is arbitrary. It's not about reality. So, like,
no,
if
but like
if I say,
he's saying the word in reality, and he has an intention in reality.
No, like, if I say bachelor is an unmarried man, that's not true. It's just, it's analytic. It's true by definition, just because that's happened to be how I used it. There isn't a reference to reality in that case. It's just made up.
This is a rock. How would you know that this is a rock? Like, as in, like, would you know that was right? Like,
if his sense experience corresponded to the idea in his head that he referred to as rock.
Okay, right. And when we say the words, like, a bachelor is an unmarried man, the difference there is essentially the fact that it exists in your mind.
Yeah, there is
That's
no sense experience of a bachelor.
right. Okay. Excellent. And but there is a sense experience of a rock.
Yes.
Right. And so when someone is unmarried, you don't think that's a physical occurrence, like so for example, it's conceptual, it happens in reality, but it's something observable and objective. Would you disagree?
No, because bachelor and married aren't properties of things in reality. They're abstract properties we apply to things. You can't go to a different universe and then
Okay.
deconstruct a person's body and find the unmarried or bachelor property in them somewhere. It's not a physical property. It's an abstract label we apply to things, like tall.
But like tall, for example, references height, right?
Yeah, but you could. There's no truth to tall. Tall isn't like that person is tall is true. Like
it's referentially true, isn't it?
No, it's completely subjective on the individual. Like tall could be
Well, I
lots
mean,
of different things.
you could say that it's subjective in the sense, like, for example, if I was to say, that is a tall tree because most trees that of that whatever do not grow that big, and what you mean by tall is essentially something which is above average height. That would be like a physical reality, wouldn't it? Like,
yeah, but again, the concept of tall would be subjective unless you gave like an actual physical property definition of saying tall is exactly 6 feet, and if it's 7 feet, therefore it meets the criteria of tall. Then yes, then it would have an objective criterion. But just saying,
we disagree on like almost the entire. Like, I wasn't expecting this because we actually agree for them almost entirely on morality. Except I thought we did because when you talk about the impositions of will, like I would agree, like, but I would say will is self-determination, and then self-determination is only possible.
oh, I had a question about that too. I wanted to ask, like you said that there was this other implicit goal in our desires or whatever. Like, would it be immoral in your worldview to override the implicit goal? Say, I have this implicit goal, I want to get rid of it, and then just turn it off or something. Would that be immoral?
I don't think there is a way to override.
Hypothetical,
What
if it was
would be
hypothetically possible.
well, I don't think that would be like for example, if we were to say like, would it be hypothetically possible to override? I don't think it because in my action I could not help but like it would be to say that like I would have to desire not to desire, kill myself, for example. Um, would it be wrong, for example, to not desire anymore?
The example I was thinking of was like, imagine we lived in my best of all possible worlds and we knew there was this property of this implicit desire thing that existed. I don't know what it is. And I say, I want to turn that off. I snap my fingers and it gets turned off. I don't know what that means, but
I think the funny thing is that like this is like your entire like we're gonna get on this in a second because I think you make a very similar error to Kant in a very different way.
well, at least I'm in good company. I like
Yeah,
Kant.
that's the thing. At least it's like it's but and utilitarianism does it too. So it's the abstract universal. There's no referential point in which like you can say something is foundationally good. Like you'd have to be able to show that it is good necessarily, and that it is, and like you're kind of axiomatically implying a notion of goodness without
Well, again,
any.
my notion of goodness is purely synthetic. I think goodness is a object in the world, and we're just referring to that object. So I'm
But
not
then
using.
yeah, but like when you see like we're referring to that object and you're saying like we intuitionally know that like there's no, it would be like
Yeah, we can't prove it exists.
Is the way morality functions.
Yeah, we don't have any proof that it exists. It's purely a hypothetical object, like a physics WIMP, weakly interactive massive particle. We can't demonstrate it exists. It's just a mathematical object right now, or just look at the math and say there's this thing, it could exist. That's it.
But then like we're not making assumptions when we say like ontologically good is the imposition is to avoid imposition of will. It's not just
That would be just a description of the object. That's it. So
how is that a description of if it's like the platonic good, for example? It's like for example, it's perfectly good, like everything about it is good, it is, and it's observably good, and I cannot help but deny it's good. Then how would you respond to something like G.E. Moore's open-ended argument? Like, oh yeah, open
Well,
question
yeah.
mark.
So if you ask what makes it good, I'm saying it's literally the physical thing. That object is its nature is good.
No, but why is it that like I could go that's good, and then someone go no that's bad?
So you could. Language is arbitrary, but I'm saying that it's a fact of the world. Like if I said the world is round and you said the world is flat, one of us is factually wrong and one of us is factually right. And what makes us factually wrong or right is the reference to reality. So I'm saying that what makes it good is there's some property of reality which
We
determines the
refer to
good.
the same property in this thing. So we look at murder occurring in the world. Someone's being murdered. It's an imposition of will. You say that imposition of will is wrong. I say it is. Well, I would actually say it was wrong, but let's say someone says it's right. Like, why are you right and they're wrong?
It releases an immoral particle, and we can measure the immoral particle.
What?
So like I'm saying it's a property of the world. There is literally a thing in the world which is moral or immoral, and if you do a moral or immoral action, it releases a moral or immoral particle, so we can know for a fact this is moral or immoral because it releases this particle. And therefore, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. The release of the particle, determined by reality, determines if it's good or bad. Your opinion doesn't matter anymore. Just like if I said the world is round or world is flat.
But like as of yet, what you're relying upon is intuition, right?
Yeah, right now I can't demonstrate the particle. The particle is purely hypothetical. That's essentially
Right. And
but just assume we could actually demonstrate there is a particle.
we're bootstrapping here, right? That ethics exists.
What?
Like that we're just pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We're just hoping it does. It's just an assumption.
Oh, it's a hypothetical, so it's not an assumption. It's like saying M theory is true. Like we don't know if M theory is true. String theory. We don't know if the many worlds is true.
Like for example, we would say that given the evidence, there is a good amount.
There is zero evidence for any of these things. They're purely hypothetical mathematical constructs. There's no evidence.
Mathematical like means analytically, like as in like there is like given the amount of like what could possibly be true, this is a variant possibility, right?
And no, so it's
or even probability.
Physics isn't an analytic truth. Physics is all synthetic. So all of the
but like I would argue that's something that was theoretical using reason, like purely mathematical concepts would be like be a priori synthetic.
No. So it's not. Physics doesn't use pure mathematics. It uses physics. So every mathematical object in physics corresponds to a discovered principal particle law in physics. So every one of the things in physics is synthetic. It is a thing that exists, that is demonstrated to exist. And you're only allowed to combine those in different ways. There's no pure analytic math in physics.
Yeah, but then if we extrapolate from those things to...
you combine them in different ways to create new hypotheticals.
Yeah, let's just say like that. Let's just run with that. So we'll combine them in different ways to create new hypotheticals. There would only be like a certain number of possibilities, and some would be more possible than others because they would explain more things, right? Do you agree?
That's the difference. There's infinitely many different ways to combine them, as far as I know, because you could add like just add the things, the equations, like add 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Dismiss the original. Like
no, so I mean, like you take a theory, for example, the multiverse theory is combining two different equations in physics, which is the early universe inflation, Goose early universe inflation, and vacuum states in empty space. It takes those equations and it puts them together to create the multiverse theory. That's what the multiverse theory is. But you can take those and then just take another equation and add to it, and take another equation and add to it, another equation and add to it, another particle add to it. And you can just take all of the different verified laws, principles, and particles, combine them in many different ways to create and just keep adding random ones, or just keep adding the same one multiple times in different ways to get just infinitely many possible mathematical theories of the universe. They like all of the theories in quantum mechanics explain everything. Like M theory literally explains everything. There is no prediction that could be made that could not be confirmed by M theory. It makes every prediction possible. It says literally anything that could happen can happen. It's like a square circle existing, and it would be fine. So there's infinitely many.
Square circle, like, no.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't.
It does.
Because a square circle is not something that's possible. That's what I would say.
That's different topic. Look at paraconsistent logic. It is possible there is a square circle. Possible that there's a universe with 2 + 2 = 5.
In which you'd have to assert that logic could that something could not.
Paraconsistent logic where there's true logical contradictions. Yeah,
I would say that there is no possibility of that. One, it would be impossible for us to know about. So its assertion would be beyond human comprehension. And then I would say that it would that the assertion itself is ungrounded because it seems to reject the necessitation law within modal logic, which implies that it could happen. so that there is a possibility that logic actually functions.
Yeah, so
So
paraconsistent logic is a thing. There are definitely different versions of logic that do adopt that. Dilithial logic is a thing, but that's a different topic. I tend to agree that I don't think that we should, standard logic is good, but that's a different topic. So the point is that there's infinitely many different ways we could construct physical theories. They all make the exact same predictions. There isn't the ways to assess which ones are better right now is, does it make testable predictions, which are confirmed? If so, then it wins automatically. None of them do, so we don't have a preference that way. And so the way we assess them right now is which one's the simplest. That's essentially which one's the most mathematically elegant. And that's not really an accepted metric. So right now there is no consensus on which of these is the best. We're just, here's a bunch of theories, pick whichever one you like. That's the consensus. The same thing.
We're empirical verification.
Yeah, because we're looking for empirical verification. We don't have it, so they're all just hypotheticals right now. And my model of morality.
Oh yeah.
What?
So if someone like extrapolates, like for example, it's not just like from what I'm aware, like I don't think they just sandwich maths together willy-nilly and just be like, I don't know if it works or not, but whatever. They try and actually work out whether the maths is actually able to function, like in terms of like against the physical universe. Like if for example something that like if they did the maths wrong, they would be able to show that the maths was inadequate. Like as in like you could be wrong in the way in which you do maths, even in physics, right? Like you could create a theory which is mathematically wrong. Yeah.
Yes, well, sort of. So what they do is they take the observations we have in quantum mechanics and physics and then create a mathematical system that can describe those. And it doesn't matter what else it can describe. If it can also allow for a square circle, that's fine. As long as it can explain the stuff we see, then it's fine.
Okay, I mean, we'll get on.
But yeah, it's a different topic. So how it relates to my morality is the same kind of a thing. Is I'm looking at the evidence, moral intuition, moral progress. What can explain these? It can be explained purely as a psychological phenomenon we made up through evolution, or it could be explained by a platonic object, or it could be explained by this abstract ideal of the best of all possible worlds. It can be explained by all of those different things. They're all hypotheticals. We don't know the answer yet. It's not a solved problem in philosophy. We just have a bunch of hypothetical solutions.
So like just out of curiosity, why would we come to the conclusion that with your theory that it's the imposition of will, that's just like a shot in the dark given what we know, yeah?
They all are, yeah. They're all
Right.
different hypothetical solutions.
Okay, and they're all hypothetical solutions. And so there is no real grounding for that. Well, there is grounding. It's simply an here's the thing.
Yeah, we have bad evidence. We have terrible evidence. We don't know what the answer is. A bunch of people are just hypothetically positing different solutions for what objective morality is.
But really, all you have to go off this is that like, and the jump is pretty big, that you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's
as if morality is a thing.
Well, it's moral intuition and moral progress. So it's not.
Yeah, so moral intuition would be, let's say, moral sense, which is like primarily like what, like a mixture of like maybe emotion.
Yeah, it's purely emotion. It's just I feel that is bad when I see it, and that's it. It's just emotion.
Okay, so if someone says like, I feel that there's something like bad here, your hypothesis is to say, rather than that saying that like, and the fact that these motions can contradict each other, the fact that there is an incredible amount of like it can't really explain. So if I was to have empathy and someone wasn't, if I was to let's say someone was to have like a drive to hurt someone and somebody else didn't, or let's say somebody else wants to be dominated and lose their will in terms of and I know you could say that it's still their desire. I know the paradox. It's actually like you can't desire not to desire.
I would actually go different. I'd say if you desire to lose your desire and become a perfect slave, then it would be moral to allow you to do that.
Right, but then wait, right, because right. I'm sorry, I'm just in paradox right now. Right.
But yeah, so the only evidence for morality is moral intuition and moral progress, which is crappy evidence. We don't have much to go off of there.
And in this, you were hypothetically postulating that that the will is what we should maximize, the volition.
Yes.
And that's what most and we assume that that's what most people would consider to be good.
I don't care what most people would do. I'm just looking at the evidence.
Oh, it actually would be good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And
of course, we shouldn't believe this just because I say it. Like that's not a good basis. I then use this as a model to make testable predictions.
There, if I'm honest.
So I make a hypothetical solution to what objective morality is. I make testable predictions, and then we see if the testable predictions are true, and then that would be a reason to believe it.
Okay, and the testable predictions, based off this version being good, would be whether people intuitively agree whether it's good or not.
No, it'd be like in the future, our moral intuitions are we're going to see rocks as falling on people as immoral. That's like one of my predictions.
Yeah, but right now, like what perceptual, like our way of perceiving the good is intuition. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would have to be able to say that the good was something perceivable outside of intuition. Otherwise, you'd be relying upon intuition as verification, yeah, or falsification.
No, the verification is what our intuition will be in the future. So I can make a prediction about how it's going to change. So even if it is what we're
But then
verifying,
that could also be explained through psychology, like possibly, like even
yes,
psychoanalysis.
yes,
It could be explained through this, like of
yep,
like
yep.
loads of other things.
Problem of underdetermination. Every single theory, every single discovery can always be explained by any theory, no matter what. The reason we accept one over the other is that if it can make the testable predictions first, it wins.
See, I disagree. I think that we trust one over the other because we're able to show that it answers more questions than the other, which is why something like relativity overtook.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
No, you
not. So
disagree.
God did it can explain literally everything, but the fact that it can explain everything doesn't mean it's good. It's not
No, I
about.
agree. I agree that, but it came first, right? Like,
No,
and
it's whichever one makes the testable predictions first wins. That's how
in
science
terms of
progresses.
like, it's the belief of that time, if you mean by win. Wait,
Which
you mean testable? No, I thought you said testable predictions, right? So then we're not counting God in testable, yeah?
no,
Or we're
God is
counting.
testable. Like
Okay,
I believe in God.
and
God's going to make a gold brick. I pray to
okay,
God. No gold brick. Damn it. Testable.
right, okay, right.
So
And you'd say that like the fact that God cannot answer those testable predictions is why it's lost.
well, no. So it's that God makes no successful testable predictions. If you could make a successful testable prediction and attribute it to God, and it
But you can't
worked
say that
consistently,
God explains everything.
right? God can explain everything. You can post hoc explain everything, but you can't future infer things. That's the
Yeah, I would
difference.
agree. I would agree. Yeah, unless you just say that like the will of God is it's the will of God is to like do whatever. So like, but it'd have to be like predictable, like Newtonian physics predicting the bodily movements of the planets, kind of predictable. I get you.
Yeah, you have to predict something we
Uh,
don't know yet, and if you could do that, that would be evidence of God.
right. And so it's predictable because it can be shown to be deductively true, as in like if A then B, like kind of
That would just be a
like
different way to
it has to be
make the prediction.
inferentially like flow, as if to go like because if the universe is like this, then this will happen. If that does happen, then I have I have synthetic evidence to say that that logical inference was in
The,
fact
the
right, and the universe
logical
is
the,
like
the
this. Like,
logical inference is just a different way to describe the causal relation. That's it.
yeah. Okay. Okay. I get you. Right, I agree. Okay. And we would say that, let's say, because I don't think we're actually disagreeing on this. So if we were to say that, you know, Einstein's theory of relativity, I'd say that that is able to make greater predictions, answer more questions, and answer more questions or provide more answers towards these, or like of why, when I say answers more questions, I'd say like, for example, you know, like
There's a list of past data, and it can explain more of the past data than the current theory. So there's lots of different things that are on
yeah,
the table to explain.
yeah, it can explain the same and more in terms of predictability. It's capable of predicting the same and more. Was what makes the theory better, yeah.
Well, I'd make a distinction between explaining past data and predictability. Those are two different things. So explaining past data is post hoc reasoning. It's I forget what the actual scientific term is. I have it saved somewhere, but it's not the same as predictability. Predictability is the fact that you can use it to answer things we don't know yet, as opposed to just
Yeah,
explaining things we do know already.
yeah, I would agree. But then, like for example, like the greater predictability would be something that would be the function of the theory, showing that it is functionally more capable than another theory if it has greater predictability. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll agree on that, right? And that would be why like relativity overtook Newtonian physics.
Right, because it could make predictions about the curvature of the sun that were more accurate than Newtonian mechanics
And if
got
it
right.
failed to answer the same things Newtonian physics did in the same thing that like in terms of like, let's say the way that the bodily planets moved, it would also, like, for example, if it failed to make those predictions, it would be seen as
It would
inadequate.
only apply to the light bending around the sun or something. So it would say it would only work in these cases to these specific things. It wouldn't apply
Yeah.
to these other things.
Okay, well, I actually agree. Right, that's fine. And that's great. Like, we're actually on the right track there. So, and you would say that the reason that, like, I would say that predictability, that ability to that predictability, to say that it is capable of greater overall predictions, it's a better theory, is to say that it is giving us more information which can be shown to be accurate against reality. Like, you would agree?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, right, cool. And the way that we show that is more accurate is by reasoning. And
No, by reference to the world. It's always the sense reference to the world. The reasoning doesn't mean a damn thing. The reasoning is just a language to express the reference to the world.
so if we were all having, like, let's say like, I don't know, let's say like 5 of us were hallucinating and 5 of us weren't, truth then becomes unknowable for you, yeah?
Yeah, we couldn't tell the difference. We would just
Or what if I was to say that, like, if I was to give someone an argument and go, right, okay, but given the circumstances of your, like, a rational argument, given the circumstances of your perceptual data, and I cause them to doubt their perceptual data, and they were able to work out whether it was possible or not that, like, or probable that there was a dragon in front of them, and they were to say, actually, that, like, this dragon in fact does not exist, even though 5 of us are hallucinating. I think it was those mushrooms we ate before from that random, like, guy or something. I don't think mushrooms actually make you see dragons, but whatever. Let's just imagine they did. Like,
they
let's just
totally
say,
do.
like,
I've had those kind of mushrooms.
they would be able to reason themselves out of that, let's say, predicament.
No, so you couldn't ever use a rational argument to try to disprove a sense experience. Like you need a different sense experience. You need some kind of other sense experience to override the first experience.
I'm not saying it disproves the experience. It doesn't disprove them having the experience. It disproves their prediction of their conclusion of reality.
Right. No, you can never use an analytic truth to disprove a synthetic experience. You'd have to have just a different synthetic evidence there to disprove it.
No. I disagree. I think you can rely upon the experience of the other, and I think that's why peer review functions. Because otherwise,
right. Like, so that would be two synthetic experiences, and you're comparing the different synthetic qualities of those. But you could never just use the analytic argument.
You are comparing are aspects of common experience. You're looking for the commonalities, and you're saying that this is most probably true because they are common in both experiences.
I'm not following what you're saying here. So, like, so if we have two people, if we have
looking at a telescope, right?
Yeah.
And they see like, like stars in the sky, like, I don't know, like Alpha Centauri, and they're like, oh, that's Alpha Centauri, it's right there, that's great. And then one guy looks in the telescope and goes, nah, it's not there. Right? We should believe like the 99 out of the 100 because it's more probable that they actually did have because they had the common experience. It's more likely that they are correct together.
Well, I would say that we should take whichever theory makes testable predictions, which are confirmed. Like, if I predict that, well, if we look at it now, we'll see it.
As you say, is the form of is a form of perceptual verification or falsification from the other's experiences.
Right. So again, it's about future things. So it's not past things. Like we can past explain both experiences in lots of different ways, but we're going to accept whichever one makes the future predictions correctly. So if the future predictions, we say, if we all look and see it, or if one hypothesis says we will look and see it in the future, and one hypothesis says we will look and not see it in the future, and we look and we don't see it, then that theory is the one that's right. It doesn't matter how many people accept it. If only one person says...
But then, like, so would it be equally true? So, for example, the person who looks and doesn't see it, is it not true for them?
I don't know what you mean. So
if they don't see it, if they simply like they look for the prediction, right? Like they perceptually, for example, are unaware or incapable of seeing it for whatever reason. Are they wrong for rejecting the theory, or are they right for?
They're right for rejecting the theory. If they can't reproduce it and they're trying to do the experiments and they can't get the results that are said to be there.
What if like almost everyone else was able to reproduce it?
No, they wouldn't be reasonable to accept it just because everyone else does. It would still be reasonable to say I can't get the results.
So you would say that it would be so why should I trust for example, the predictions of anyone else? In terms of, for example, physics, why should I trust any of physics? Because I don't really participate that much in the field. Like I'm just an
Because you don't
observer.
really participate that much in the field and you can't reproduce the experiments, or they can. Like
Right,
if you
yeah, but
could,
they
if you could,
reproduce them in front of me, so my perceptual data is not being explained.
no, if you could reproduce the experiments and don't get the results, then it would be unreasonable for you to accept the hypothesis. But if you can't, or you don't have the capability and you realize their capability is better, then it's reasonable to just accept what they're doing.
Reasonable. So what we're doing is based on reasonable. Like what's reasonable or not.
Yeah, reasonability, what you believe is based on reasonability. That's true.
So if I was to say that like it's reasonable to say that I'm just doing the experiment wrong, or it's reasonable to say that I'm doing it, or I'm incapable of seeing it, or it's reasonable to say that I may be making a mistake
Yeah,
that other people are not making.
definitely.
I should accept their perceptual data and not mine.
Definitely.
Okay. In which case, like you don't think that like if it's direct relation to reality and my perception of relational reality, then why is it that reason has allowed me to define my own perceptual relation to reality?
Because you use reason to show that your sense experience could be flawed from other sense experience. You say, I have a sense experience reason to show that this sense experience may not be correct. Now, if you do the experiment correctly and you have good sense experience reason to believe you've done the experiment correctly and you don't get the results, then you have reason to doubt everyone else's position.
Right. Okay. I think like,
but the
you
reason
can always
the reason
then
isn't
it's
what's important. The reason is just
still
describing the
not
sense
true.
experience.
Reason's a matter of probability about one's experiences, right? Like, and I think we probably do need to have a conversation about whether empiricism is sense because you reject sense certainty, I'm assuming, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like you're a fallibilist, you reject sense certainty. And what you would say is that it would be probabilistic, yeah?
Yeah.
Probabilistic relation. Okay. And have you ever like if I had have known that we're going to debate, we probably should do another debate on empiricism.
Well,
If you'd like,
I'm not saying empiricism is the only way to gain knowledge. It's only the way to gain knowledge about reality, independent of definitional truths, synthetic truths, analytic truths.
well, I mean, like the thing is with analytic truth, you kind of said that language is essentially subjective anyway, and just it and so like even the analytic truths like a car is a car does not necessarily function if my understanding of if my interpretation is not being held constant. If I'm saying a car is a car and my interpretation of the car is moving at each point, that's kind of it's actually the Geach if it's kind of like the Frege Geach embedding problem. This is the issue you'll arrive to unless you ground language in something that's objective from an individual consciousness.
Right. So I'm not claiming to be an empiricist where the only way to gain knowledge is sense experience, but I'm saying the only way to gain knowledge about the external reality is sense experience, where you can still gain knowledge in other ways if you just define knowledge or truth independently of the external world. For like definitional truths are totally fine. You can say a bachelor's an unmarried man, and that's true in the sense of the analytic truths. I'm fine with that. And that's perfect. And reason and logic you can say are analytically true in the same sense. Those are fine. I'm totally okay with those as a way to gain knowledge, but they're not giving you knowledge about the external world that you need the sense experience stuff for.
Right. We'll just have to debate that and at some point. Charlie?
He's been trying to get out of the door for like an hour.
I know. I'll have to let him out 1 second. So otherwise he's just gonna keep going. If you just give us 2 seconds, mate. Sorry. I think someone's making food. That's the. But yeah, like so. If we're then talking, like, if we move on to, for example, you said about my my theory about this idea of rejecting impositions of the will. Like, so for example, if your position in the future, you're in the best of all possible worlds, and then you realize that there's this imposition of will, could you just turn it off? Like, sorry, there is an aspect of your will that you wish to just turn off. I think you'd be asking the will not to be the will. Then that'll be the best way to describe it. I would say that what makes it the will is the fact that it's a goal-orientated drive.
Well, then there couldn't be a separate implicit thing behind it, because that would just be the will.
Well, yeah, but I'm describing as an aspect of the will. Like that's like, for example, when I'm saying that you have a goal, I'd say that you have a goal that you're unaware of, but it is still your goal. It is still the goal of the will.
But if there's a
And that,
goal I'm unaware of,
so
then there's
if there was no impositions of the will, in terms of the way in which my theory works, and you want to say it, is you wouldn't want to turn it off because you'd be trying to turn off what makes it the best of all possible worlds, the satisfaction of that goal.
so if there is this goal I'm unaware of, and there's goals I am aware of, there's a
Uh-huh.
difference between those two things. So
Yeah.
it can't be synonymous with the will. There has to be a difference in some sense, which means you should be able to turn it off and not turn off the other ones.
Well, no, I mean, you could say that the will does not have full conceptualization of itself. I do not know myself to the greatest extent.
Right. But that means there's a difference between the will and this one particular thing, right?
There's a difference between for example, how I try and enact my desires and what is like desire itself. Like, for example, if you look, I mean, I mean, I don't agree with psychology necessarily, but like psychological sublimation, like desires can like sublimate in a variation of forms, like and be expressed. There is a commonality within those desires, which is the action urging processes, which is trying to achieve a certain overall like if you were to say that if you take like the Nietzschean definition, like the will is trying to discharge its strength against the world, and I think that's quite like adequate with yours as well. Like it seems that you're trying to make the world in a certain way. You're trying to make the world in the way that you want to do, essentially.
Your
The
original example was that you can act in a way that is contrary to your implicit desire thing, right? That would be
I would say that like it's important. Like for example, you can't act in a way that is you can't defy all desire, but you can defy individual desires. Would you agree with that?
maybe I think so, but I'm still trying to follow your original because your original
My
distinction
point
between
would be that there is a unification within our system of drives, and that is what we are trying to maximize.
I'm trying to tie this into your original contention with my position. So your original
Right.
contention with my position is that just fulfilling your desires is not the ultimate good because there's this implicit thing that you could be acting against when you're fulfilling your conscious desires. And that was the difference between our position, right?
Yeah, like essentially, like yeah, the heroin addict, for example, could be mistaken. My
So
point
so
was
so
is
my
that they're
question
mistaken about a
is
particular desire. They're not mistaken about desire. You cannot be mistaken that you are a subject. Even at the end of Cartesian doubt, you don't come to the conclusion that desire doesn't exist.
yeah, so my question was is that implicit desire that we have that you value, if I want to turn that off and say I want the heroin and I don't care about this implicit desire at all, would that be immoral?
If you were to turn off, my point would be, if you were to turn off that desire for the heroin, you'd have also turned off the desire for the heroin. You've
I
turned
mean,
off
if I
desire.
turn off the
You
implicit
can't
desire,
desire not to desire because it's still a desire. It's like, do you see what I mean?
right? So
It's a
so
paradox.
I'm still desiring that, but you're saying my desire for the heroin is contrary to some other desire I have,
Uh-huh.
and I want to turn off that other desire. I still want the heroin. Heroin is fine.
It's
Not
not
the
like the point is like I'm not saying that it's contrary to the desire. I'm saying that the desire for heroin is an aspect of desire, which is essentially what like desire is unified in you that you are trying to reach this goal. Like it is desire itself is not like a single particular instance of an action urging process. It's actually a universal within you.
right.
It's a
Right. I grant that desire is
to your
desire. So
subjectivity.
but I'm still trying to go. What is the difference between our two positions here? So I'm saying go for the heroin if you want the heroin. Take the heroin. You're saying no, don't do that. Right?
Yeah, because I'd say that you are mistaken in thinking that you actually want that. You're ignorant to your actual desire.
Okay. And what is that actual desire? I say I don't want that actual desire. I want the heroin.
But you say it, but then if you were to say like if you were to just say it like assert it, I simply want the heroin, right? Then you would it wouldn't be true against reality, and in which case it's not verifiable or falsifiable and to show that it was right or wrong. Yeah, you'd have to be able to show that no, actually, here is why I actually desire the heroin, right?
Well, yeah,
Now,
you're absolutely right that we couldn't know for certain. Like maybe I have some implicit knowledge of God that I am hiding, and so I do actually believe in God. I'm just not aware of it, like the religious people argue. And now there's no way for me to falsify that. I can't prove that I don't somewhere in my mind know of God. I'm just hiding it. That's a possibility. But but the distinction between the two, there is a conscious knowledge I have of a desire to have heroin, and you're saying there is this subconscious desire to do something else.
well, I would say that what unites all desires is the attempt to change the world in a certain way to bring around a consequence in which is positive phenomenological experience, and or avoid negative phenomenological experience. Like you don't desire for the sake of the desire; you desire for the end goal. Like for example, when you want to snap your fingers and have a six pack, it's not about the action urging process that just snaps the fingers. There is the object of your desire, which is the expression of creating a world in which you have a six pack, and that's great, right? You desire an experience. You wish to experience something. Now, the point is, I would say that you wish to experience positive and you wish to avoid negative. Now, we can call that pain and pleasure, but I think that went up in the semantic sort of
Yeah, because
uh
you can want pain, because pain can be fun.
yeah, well, not pain physically can be fun, but suffering cannot be. You cannot want to have something that you by definition do not want.
Yes, you can. Like I can be a scientist. I want to know what suffering is like. Let's experience suffering just to see what it's like.
But then yeah, okay.
But yeah, different topic. So again,
Like,
so
that's like you wish to understand what it means, like what it means to suffer. You do not wish to, you cannot desire um for your desire to be actively frustrated. So like for
like
example,
I
like
can desire something and then place obstacles in my way to gaining the desire to see what that experience is like. So I can desire restriction of my will. That is a possibility. I can desire impositions to occur. That's fine.
yeah, but restrictions of your will, that's fine. Like for example, like say I'm glad that the law exists and like it restricts my will, like in many ways, like if like it, or it could restrict my will or whatever. Like that's fine. Like that would be my position. I'd say that actually these restrictions aren't restrictions anyway. They're actually your freedom because they free you from your own ignorance. And I would say that the reality is that the only thing that is like when you wish to suffer, if you had to desire something that was to create a negative experience which you by definition could not which would want to be out of, which you would define as negative, which would be otherwise defined as something you wish to get out of, you are incapable of actually wanting to be in that scenario.
I don't think that's true because there could be reasons you would want it while having reasons you don't want it. But as long as there's some logical reason that could be called a desire to get you to that
I
conclusion, it
mean,
would still be
like you could say like an individual circumstance, like I desire like this pain because it like the pain of like saving someone's life, but it costs you like a hand or something. You desire the suffering in the sense that you desire like the overall change in the world, which maybe saves the other person, or you
like, for
desire
example, I could
the
desire to prove you
curiosity,
wrong. So I'm going to desire
curiosity.
the
Yeah,
worst
like,
possible world imaginable. I'm going to go to that world just to prove you wrong. So there's some desire
yeah,
there, even if
exactly,
it's
exactly. But then you're not in the worst possible world because you're still getting to prove us wrong.
so.
And then so you couldn't desire to be there because it's impossible, because desire would always be frustrated in that world, because by your theory it would be a direct imposition of your will permanently.
Right, but again, I would still say that if you want to die, suicide, that's perfectly fine.
Suicide, I mean, like depending upon like yeah, we can talk about
No,
like
if you want
narrative.
to die just for the sake of dying, nothing wrong with your life. You still have a perfectly reasonable life to live. You just say, "I just want to die because why not?" I would say it's perfectly
For the
moral.
crack.
For the crack. So again, the difference between our position is that I say give the guy the heroin, you say don't give the guy the heroin, and the reason, as far as I can tell, is you just say that, well, by definition, people want desires, and so it's contrary to desires to get the heroin. That seems to be, you're presupposing that position, but I don't see any justification. It still seems like, from my position, that
You're saying that I'm presupposing that there is a connection between desires.
no, that there's this implicit thing that we're violating by giving them the heroin, something like that.
Yeah, I would say that like they're violating their desire. Like they think they want heroin. That's how they are acting upon their desire. that is the content of their desires, but then in reality that we're violating what they're actually trying to achieve, which is positive phenomenological experience.
And why can't I just say the same thing about, well, you have this implicit desire to have God, and you just don't realize it. Therefore, anything you do that I disagree with is immoral, and therefore you should do this implicit desire to get God.
Implicit desire about God, which is like an implicit desire to like, let's say like God's a very funny one because people can define him as good, which is like they say God is good, and then we can end up in the weeds with this.
Forget the morality. It's just we can just assert it.
Right, that's right. So we just assert that God, you want God, you will be Christian, and if you don't want to be Christian, well, tough, because you want God, you just don't realize it.
No, say you have this implicit desire to be with God, you just don't know it.
Why do you think I want God? And they say, "Nah, you just do."
No. They're saying you have an implicit desire for God, you just don't know it.
Right, but they don't actually reference any aspect of me and why. So if I was to say, like, for example, the fact that I ask someone, why are you trying to take that heroin? They will provide me with a reason for the most part, right? They'll go,
I want
heroin. I want to feel good. I want to take heroin, right? And you say, right, so you want to feel good. Yeah, okay. And you think the heroin's going to make you feel good. Yeah, but you're wrong. And I can show you wrong. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, like, so how would you do that? Because heroin is good. Heroin does make you feel good.
Okay. And then like I'll say like, right, so would you like and like so in one moment he feels good. In the next moment,
no, this is me. I'm saying I want heroin. Heroin makes me feel good. Convince me otherwise. Go.
Okay. So you want heroin because it makes you feel good, yeah?
Yep.
Makes you feel good in a moment.
Yep.
Let's how many hours do you think? Like
I don't care.
Let's say 3 hours, right? And then you're gonna have negative like you're gonna have massive withdrawals. Like
that's fine.
Like it's probably actually longer than that, like in terms of like overall effects, actually.
Yeah, it
like,
depends on your tolerance level and what you're used to and how much you're addicted to it. So yeah.
Yeah, like so 3 hours you've got of bliss, and then you're gonna go into pain.
Yep.
Right. You're gonna start a slow path down withdrawals.
Yep.
Right. And then what? Sorry?
I'm fully aware of this. Yes, I know the consequences of heroin.
Okay, and I'll say right, you're fully aware, and you're okay with that. And you're yeah, I'm actually okay. This pain pleasure ratio is I'm fine with.
Yeah, I don't even care about it. I just want the pleasure. Who cares about the ratio?
Yeah, well, this is the point. This is why I said go gas before.
Convince me. I'm still like I still want the heroin. Convince
I would
me
say like you want it right now in this given right.
Yes.
You when you are coming down will probably have wished you hadn't taken it, or you would wish you had more, right?
Yeah, so or I just wish the pain is gone. Yes.
Yeah, you wish the pain was gone. Yeah. Well, you can't change the pain from your consequences. You can't will backwards, can you? You can't like undo.
Well, I can't will to undo my heroin, but it's definitely possible. It's not logically impossible for the pain to stop. Like I could will to take the heroin and take the heroin, and then I could will for the pain to stop, and the pain could stop. There's no logical contradiction there.
Well, I mean, I mean, in terms of like, you could do something else which would then remove the pain. Like, you mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like I snap my fingers and we're in the Matrix, I turn the pain off.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Except then that changes what heroin does, and like I'm talking about the reality that we live in, and how it's actually going to affect you, and like and so on, right?
Right.
So I'm saying that. So like I'm saying that you will not value the come down, and you agree that I will not value the come down, and then I will say afterwards, do you think that the pain of the come down or is worth the pleasure of the high? And you say they you know like if you were to be rational about it, you might say I'm not sure. Right?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So let's go with your example. Let's go with your example and then say that what if there's a third possibility? So that you have option A, take the heroin, feel the pain, but also feel the suffering afterward. Option B, don't take the heroin, don't get the pleasure, but also don't feel the pain. Option C, we're in the best of all possible worlds, take the heroin and admit the pain. Which is the most moral option?
Yeah, but the best of all possible worlds is defined as the best scenario.
Oh, no, that's just, it's not defined as the best. It's just a label I give it. You can just get rid of the word best, call it blurb if you want to. I don't care. So you have the three options. Well, option A, take the heroin and feel the pain. Option B, don't take the heroin, don't feel the pain.
We agree that the greatest expression of will would be like, for example, it would be like the greatest expression of one's desires without without the see, like I would say that with the way desire works, desire itself is a form of suffering, that we actually, for the most part, wish to avoid.
Okay, go back. Answer the question.
We'll kind of go into that in
question.
a minute. But
I want to answer the question first.
Say that, like, for example, would you be taking the heroin and not feeling the pain of the come down in the best of all possible worlds, C, like, or the best in C? Would that be the best one? Not necessarily.
Okay, how so?
Right. In a vacuum, yes. Like, in terms of it's better than, like, you know, each of those. Oh, you closed the door. What a good dog. In a vacuum, yes, you would say that, like, world A is probably the worst come down in heroin. World B, was it? No, world A. No, world A is
A is take the heroin. B is don't take the heroin. C is take the heroin and not feel the pain.
Right. Okay. Obviously, in C, I would say that, like, the only thing that could make it not the best of all possible worlds in that, or the best scenario, is outside issues, outside this particular heroin.
Okay, so assume there's this other issue, whatever it is, option D or whatever. So now we have 4 options. We have option A, which is take the heroin, feel the pain, and whatever this other thing is. Option B, same thing. We don't take the heroin, we don't feel the pain, and whatever this other option is also in there. Option C, we do take the heroin, we don't feel the pain, and there's this negative whatever it is. And then we have this 4th option, which is
you're still an absolute mess, and you still can't run a life normally.
Okay, so that'll be D. So you're an absolute mess. You can't run a life normally. So now we have this 4th option, which is take the heroin, don't feel the pain, don't have a ruined life where you can't live normally. So now,
and let's say that, like, by the way, I mean can't live normally. You cause suffering to other people.
You could mean anything you want by it. It doesn't make any difference to my example. My example is that now you make this other variable also optional.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the heroin and you don't have the option of the...
But I completely agree with that, in which case we're saying, like, what we're talking about is that ethics, what I would say ethics was the ability to overcome these issues in the greatest overall possible circumstances, the greatest expression of will. I would completely agree with that. But then I would say that in your greatest expression of will is that removal of the negative consequences, because you have an implicit evaluation across your whole life and each circumstance in which you evaluate these different scenarios. Like, if you could just turn off the come down of heroin but keep the positive, you would. If you could, like, you know, run a successful life whilst taking the heroin, you would. Like yeah, absolutely. But ethics is the expression, the greatest expression of that relationship between pleasure and pain within a narrative of one's own life.
Right. So that's where there isn't a disagreement between our positions, because again, the difference is should we give the guy the heroin or should we not give the guy the heroin? You're saying we shouldn't because there's these other consequences, and I'm saying
when you talk about, like, now.
No. So again, the context of my morality is the best of all possible worlds. To know what the objective morally thing to do is, you have to put every one of those options, the consequences, in that optional category, in the best of all possible worlds. So if you can take the heroin, not feel the pain, and still have a perfectly reasonable life, that's the most moral thing to do. And we can determine...
I would agree, but it's an abstract universal. It's like...
it's meant to be.
Yeah, and I get that. Like, but, like, you know, in the words of Anthony Flew, when he talks about God, it dies the death of 1,000 qualifications.
No. That's the starting point. So you can start by discerning what the objective moral standard is by putting it into the best of all possible worlds, and then you go backwards and you can say, well, what are the limitations? We don't live in the best of all possible worlds. Here are the limitations of our worlds, and then we can determine the pragmatic thing.
I'll completely agree with that. So you have the universal and the particular, and it constantly reevaluate the universal and what it actually looks like. So you create an ideal standard, you evaluate that ideal standard, and then you come to the conclusion that it's not right. You reevaluate it in relation to the particular evidence that you have.
I think I'd put it the other way. I'd say there's the objective standard, which is always correct no matter what. And then we can apply and get as close as possible given our limitations. So, like, we can have the idea of a perfect triangle. The triangle is perfect if all the 3 sides are straight and leads to 180 degrees.
Really out there is the idea of perfection, until you don't have the idea of the perfect triangle until you understand what is limiting your idea of the perfect triangle.
No. The perfect triangle, just by definition, a triangle is a perfectly straight on 3 sides, but we can't make a perfect triangle because it's impossible for us to draw a line that's perfectly straight.
Yeah,
if you zoom in,
I understood that you weren't talking about analytic. I knew you meant but I guess like,
But
have you ever
just
you
go with
answered
me. Go
that
with me for a moment here. So we can take the idea of a perfect triangle, which is perfectly straight lines, and then we can try to use that to get as close as possible. We obviously can't do it because if you zoom in, the electrons go in a bubble shape, so you're never going to get a perfectly straight line. But we can use the idea of a perfect triangle to try and get as close as possible. So even if
Yeah,
we don't
exactly.
exist, we can still
I
use it as a
I
guide.
completely agree, and it's all about getting as close as possible to that. I would absolutely agree. But then I don't think that hermeneutically is the other way around. Like you're not always arriving at you like don't get me wrong, you do start at the it's a combination of both. It's like the Eufro dilemma. The whole point is when you talk about or any paradox, like any like definitionally true paradox, you be kind of coming to the conclusion like when you apply what is it? Does God love the pious man because he's pious, or does he love the or is he
Or
loved
is
by
it
the gods
pious
because he's
because he
pious?
loves it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And like that circle, like the whole point is that they're actually the same thing. Like it's one and the same thing happening simultaneously. That's why it's a circle, because it's tautologically the
What
he's
what
he is both loved and lovable. They are one in the same.
Well, the question of the Euthyphro dilemma is something pious because God says it's pious, or is it pious for some independent reason, and that's why God says it's pious? So it's not actually a circle there. It's just two different options.
Like like yeah, I mean, like if you were to say like, but because the whole point of the UFO dilemma is to say like, is he pious because he loves them? It was to say that because the gods love him, or is he loved because he's pious? He's saying like, but what makes him like, is he lovable, or is he loved by the gods? What is the determining feature? The point I'm trying to make is more of the fact that it's one and the same. It's
Those are
describing the same, like the love of the gods and the being loved by the gods as being lovable by the gods is the same thing that's being described in two separate ways. Is what I'm trying to say.
no, that's not quite the same thing. So the Euthyphro dilemma is asking, is that guy pious simply because he's loved by the gods? So is what makes him pious the fact that the gods love him? Or was he already prior to that? He was by some other standard, he's defined as pious. And because he's defined as pious by this other standard, that's why the gods love him. So it's asking the ontological question of what causes the piety there.
I
Is it
get that, but I'm saying that it would I'm probably talking like in a way that's probably a little bit abstract, because I'm almost talking about a conversation I had with me friend who's doing theology, and essentially what I'm trying to say is that there is not a logical mistake in separating what is lovable by the gods and what is loved by the gods. They are one and the same
all
thing,
right? Those
and
would
that's
be
what it,
definitely the same, right?
yeah. Wait, did you say they're not the same, or did you
No,
say
no,
the
those
same?
are the same. Like just saying
Yeah,
what I
that's
love and
all I'm
what I
trying to
can
say.
love.
That
Yeah.
is all I'm trying to say. That's
Okay.
right. That's what I'm trying to say when you're describing that going from universal to particular. Like you when you're saying like, is this the best of all possible worlds? No, then we'll change. What we're doing. I agree, but we don't act with this notion like we don't sit there and go right. What is the like? Even if we think like, what is the best of all possible worlds? Right. So the best of all possible worlds includes the absence of this frustration of the will, and then you go through and then you go, actually no, it actually it has this one, or it doesn't have that one, and it has this one. You reconfigure the goal just as much as you reconfigure the particular, like in terms of your knowledge of the goal is modified. It's kind of like when ancient medieval Christians, when they go on a quest and they find out actually the quest was about something that they hadn't fully understood, and then they find out the goal of the quest is something different.
Well,
I'm saying the goal
can you
is
explain this to me in the context of the triangle? So the perfect triangle is a object with three sides, 180 degrees, and I'm trying to make one as close as possible using a laser cutter, even though it's not perfect. And then I try to make one with an electron microscope, which is a little better. But how does my perception of the perfect triangle change?
let's say like when you say the perfect triangle, um with a triangle, because analytically like a shape with three sides with the straightest of all possible lines that equal to a certain point, it's almost impossible to say that it is like you'd be saying that a triangle is, so the perfect triangle is this. But what my point is to say is that our understanding of what makes something good can be flawed.
Oh
So if
yeah,
I was to
absolutely. So I'm not making
so
a
yeah,
definitional
so
argument here.
what makes it the best of all possible worlds is what like can be flawed in the first place. So like
Right,
when
right, I
I go
agree.
through and reevaluate, then I can modify my notion of best.
Right, right, I agree. So the definition of best here isn't the part that's just a label I'm giving it. So the what makes it the best is something in the world. Like what makes a triangle is
I agree. No, we both agree on that.
so your idea of what's best can't change. It's just an objective fact about reality, like a triangle is an objective fact about reality.
Well, no, your idea of best, like, I mean, if you were to say that it's an abstract, the abstract universal best cannot change, right? But like, as in like platonic good does not move, like it's unchanging.
Yeah,
Like I get that, but like your conception of the good moves, yeah.
definitely you could be
Yeah,
delusional and
okay.
whatever.
That's my point about hermeneutics. Like we start, like when we're evaluating, we're not comparing it against an abstract unknowable because it's perfectly unknowable. Like it's like trying to describe God. It dies the death of a thousand qualifications. We don't know what it is. We know kind of what it is in terms of like this abstract universal. If we say like, like if this is the most ethical, best world, when we say like this is kind of what it is. It's not like it's the best that we know of.
Right, but that's
It's
an
the best
epistemology question. The
that we reference.
epistemology question isn't relevant to my argument because I'm making an argument on ontology. I'm saying there is an objective fact about what the best is, and we're trying to get there regardless of whether
But
we
our
can.
knowledge is how we like. I guess my point is that when you're using morality, you're using it descriptively, when I'm using it prescriptively, and I'm saying that ethics, ethikos pertains to behavior. So what I'm saying is that when we are acting in the world and we are referencing, because you talked about referencing this notion of best possible world, um, that we are referencing the idea in our minds, the theory of what the best possible world is in order to achieve it, right? And that has ontological bases, which I agree, but then it is not the actual best of all possible worlds. In fact, like our knowledge does not actually perfectly correspond to the best of all possible worlds.
Sure, you said that about anything, but that would be
Yeah,
irrelevant
but
to
it
my argument.
gets better. I would say it gets better in terms of being able to produce better consequences, in terms of being evaluated as being better, closer to the best of all possible worlds.
Sure, but that isn't
That's
contingent on my argument.
hermeneutics. And that's the same. No, but I'm saying that's why I said that's hermeneutics. You're doing this, and you were like, no, it's the other way around. And I was like, no, we're actually agreeing. Because that's actually what's called philosophical hermeneutics. Like you go from universal to particular to universal. It's like the hermeneutic circle.
Right, epistemically, how we get to the knowledge of them does work that way. But my argument isn't an epistemic one about our knowledge. My argument is there is an ontological fact of the matter. Our knowledge is irrelevant. How we get there
This is
doesn't matter.
but we're talking about the ethical performance of like acting within the world.
The pragmatic approach, yes,
You
but
said it's always in reference to like, and then when we're acting, like
yeah. So the way we're acting, which is purely subjective and epistemic, and we can't be certain about it, that can be measured based off of an ontological standard, which is true regardless of our knowledge of it. And that standard doesn't change regardless of our knowledge or perception or beliefs of anything.
well, I would agree. Like in terms of like, I would absolutely agree. Um, like that's not the issue. Like the issue isn't that the ontological reality like actually modifying, like as in like the truth maker. Like I would say that yeah, that's held constant, but our theoretic like in
Oh yeah,
terms of like
absolutely. Our theoretic understanding of it completely changes and can be wrong all the time. That's
yeah,
purely,
that's great. We'll agree.
yeah,
We'll
for
agree.
sure.
Agree. But in which case, what I'm saying with the heroin addict is that in what he's wrong against is that best of all possible worlds, that he wants to take the heroin, that in the best of all possible worlds, he wouldn't want to take the heroin.
Right. Now that's where I would disagree. I would say the best of all possible worlds, he's totally fine to want to take the heroin.
Right. Except I would say, like, so if I was to turn around and say, like, I'll turn around. uh, let's say I was to say that, like, like you're saying that he mitigates all these consequences. I'm saying that, like, you're talking about the greatest expression of will, which is perhaps the greatest expression of, like, for example, he could desire two separate things simultaneously of various degrees, but overall create the greatest overall life narrative from which he would judge to be the best in the best of all possible worlds. He lives the best life, of course, the greatest expression of will for the greatest amount of time. Would you agree?
No, because you just said he desires one thing and another thing equally in two different ways. That would be a contradiction. So, so
Right.
he wouldn't desire contradictory things there. He just desires to have the heroin, to not have the pain, and to live a perfectly fine life. Which all of those, none of those are logically contradictory. He's not valuing a contradiction there.
Well, wait a minute. Like what I'm trying to say is like, right, first, like, would you agree that in the best of all possible worlds, um, anyone would want the greatest expression of their will for the longest period of time? So it'd be like the greatest expression of your will is not an expression of a single moment, but the expression of your will over the greatest amount of time. It wouldn't be just now, it would be then, tomorrow, onwards for eternity.
Uh, Maybe, but because again, you can will to restrict your will or will to suicide. I wouldn't define the
But
best of all possible worlds.
I think you're definitely making a paradox there, man.
Well,
Like you
again, the best of all possible
will.
worlds isn't defined based off of how much or how much you will. It's just the definition of you have there's no involuntary imposition of will. Like what you will, whether it's good or bad or long or short, doesn't make a difference. That's irrelevant. It's not about.
Well, what you will does make a difference, because what you will is like, for example, you willing, like what you're trying to say is that like the very fact that there is a will is the best of all possible worlds, almost,
No,
unless it's actually being like unless, like, for example, if you have a will that let's say you will to become a slave, and that and then that from being enslaved you um would will to not be a slave, but every time you aren't a slave you want to be a slave, and every time you are a slave you're not a slave. Do you know what I mean?
there's no logical contradiction there because it's
No
moments in
logical
time.
contradiction, right? Like, so you would say that, like, in terms of like, but let's say I want X, I don't want X, I want X. Like, they're two separate moments. But what if you wanted them, and you wanted to be enslaved, but then when you were enslaved, you realized that you didn't want to be enslaved? Would you agree that like only one or two of those was true? You either do or you do not want to be a slave.
No, I'd say that at one point you do and at one point you don't. I'd say those are two separate times.
Two separate times, two separate desires.
Yeah.
But let's say in terms of, let's say, let's say, like, I'm trying to make the point, let's say if it's irreversible,
Yeah. So, for
right?
example, let's say at one point I want to be a slave and I'm just going to determine that my freedoms are completely lost and I'm just going to be a slave no matter what I want or believe after that point. So, at this point in time, I've desired to restrict all of my future choices and I'm going to be a slave forever, regardless of what my future desires are. You can do that. That's moral if you
And
choose
what
to.
is being valued there is simply the will, the action urging process. Yeah.
Essentially, yeah, that's the will part.
You see, I disagree. I think what's being valued is the action urging process, is the completion of the action urging process, the expression of the will against the world. Like, for example, the expression, like, when I will, I don't do it for its own sake. I do it for a consequence, and then that consequence relates to my experiences. Would you disagree with that, or do
Yeah,
you think
so
that?
so in the world that you're describing, take if someone wants to become a slave and restrict their rights so they can never not become a slave, I would say that it's moral to let them have the right to do that, whereas you would say it's immoral and we should not let them have the right to do that, right?
Wait a minute. Sorry, say that again.
So if there's a person who wants to be a slave, they're going to give up all of their freedoms forever and say they can never not be a slave and they're just going to be forced into slavery for all eternity. My worldview is they should have the right to do that, and your worldview is they should not have the right to do that.
Yeah.
And that's where we disagree, because I would say that the higher good is the option. You should have the option to determine for yourself what you want there, and not. And it's immoral for me to restrict you from having that option.
My point would be to determine for yourself is an action of giving reasons and sufficient justifications. It's not simply the volition.
Right, and that's where we disagree. I'd say that if we look at the case and say, well, which is more moral, give them the option or don't give them the option. I think it's always going to be give them the option. It's going to always be the more moral
I think
determination.
the point in which we disagree is how much the action and the will is our own. I would say, like, I would take the Nietzschean
I'm a
point for.
determinist, so I think there is no
Yeah,
or
yeah.
only. But
This is where we disagree, because it's like, if I say how much of it is my own in terms of metaphysically being my, this is why I don't understand your point about the evil demon, because it's exactly the same in terms of it being identifiable to me. All it has to be for you is to be like, my words are identifiable to me so long as they're coming out of my mouth. Um, it doesn't matter if the evil demon spoke them first. It doesn't matter if nature gives them; they would still be mine. Like, and in terms of metaphysically, for me, what I would say, what makes something my own is essentially my action, the 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 my own rational justifications from which I apply a concept of ownership property, that I am actually owner of this action, that I have chosen for myself, that I have been uncaused and unrestricted to the greatest of overall possible degrees, that I've had the fewest overall causal notions of acting upon me, for example, people forcing me to do it or nature telling me what to do for the most part, and at the same time being unrestricted, actually managing to achieve it, do it, implement it within the world. And I would say that the combination of those two, positive and negative freedom, is what we mean by freedom, not necessarily like simply unrestricted, which would be like the Hobbesian sort of view of freedom, which I think you kind of argue for.
Yeah, that's definitely where we would disagree, because I think it's completely incoherent to argue for like rationality being the justification of freedom, because pretty much everything we do is emotional. It's not rational at all. Rationality itself is purely an emotional process, and there is no such thing as free will. It's your desire thing. We have, in order to be rational, we have to desire desire the process in the first place. And if we don't, then we wouldn't be rational. So, but the free will thing, again, I think free will is completely incoherent. I think it's logically impossible to have free will. So there is no such thing as a free choice. And I would agree with you that identity doesn't change whether it's from nature or from an evil demon. That's not the point. The point of what's different is one is an involuntary imposition of your will by another will. So like a will has imposed on your will to make it a specific way, whereas nature doesn't have any deliberate action that way, and so it wouldn't have that way. And so it's still your identity in both cases. You are still you, regardless of whether or not it's predetermined by nature, predetermined by a will, but it wouldn't be an involuntary imposition of will in one case where it wouldn't the other.
But it wouldn't be in the demon thing, because it would still be the exact, nothing about you would change.
Well, the you part isn't the difference here. The difference is there a will doing something, or is there a will not doing something? That's the difference.
But why would the will of another be any different to, why would it, like,
it wouldn't be different. It's the same.
If your will is not constructed by you, and the only reason that you identify with it is because of the phenomena that is you producing sounds and vocalizing and whatever the hell it is that you're doing, like acting within the world, then if that is the criterion, that is what identifies your actions with your identity, then nothing has changed.
No, I agree. I've said that multiple times. You're still you in either case. If you is made by God being or by nature, it makes no difference. You are still you. The difference in that case is that one, you are determined by a different being, and one, you are not determined by a different being.
Why is that relevant if you...
It's just in my definition of involuntary imposition of will and how that works. So
they're both involuntary. And like, whether you even said like nature can involuntarily put an action on you, there is no difference there.
No, the difference is that one, your ideas are determined by a different being, and one, your ideas are not determined by a different being. That's the only difference.
But but that's the thing. Like, why is that morally relevant in terms of imposition? Like, imposition is happening in both cases, whether it's conscious or unconscious.
It's a different kind of imposition. So again, it's purely just based off my definition of morality.
All of your thoughts, actions, and behaviors are all impositions upon you by nature, or by a god anyway. So they're all yours in the same respect. There is nothing metaphysically different about them. There is nothing.
There definitely is. The metaphysical difference is their origin. That's the difference.
But why does their origin change the notion of imposition, which would be the same?
It doesn't change the notion of imposition. It changes the notion of where it comes from. Like for me, an identity. What makes an individual an individual, it gives you individuality, is the fact that your consciousness is an emergent property from non-consciousness. That's what gives you you. That makes you you. If your consciousness came from a different consciousness, then you're not you. You're just a determined process of that other thing.
Well, I mean, like, what makes you you? I wouldn't say, like, when we say what the word you means, I would say, like, your criterion from being identify you and identify your own consciousness is to simply have, let's say, psychological processes which makes you feel as if it is you, because it, like in the first place. So it's an illusion anyway. It's the illusion of free will.
Right. I'm not saying that
That illusion can be given by a demon or nature. It doesn't matter. The illusion remains the same, a constant.
it's not.
And
I'm not saying that you don't have a conscious experience. That obviously is the same in both cases. I'm saying that you have developed independently of another consciousness, which is what gives your ontology a you-ness to it. You still have sense experience in both cases. You still have consciousness in both cases, but there is a difference in the cases. One, that you have emerged from a non-other being, which means gives you an individuality that you don't have in the other case. In the other case, you don't have that same individuality because your entire thought process has been determined by a different thought process.
And individuality for you would be, how would you define that?
Just the quality of what makes you an individual person, as opposed to just being copy paste being or something like that.
Right. I mean, of course, there's no way to know that whether you're not a copy paste being
Right,
in terms, like, in terms of okay. And so what you'd be saying is that if we are an individual, you'd be saying better to be an individual than not.
Yeah, I'd say it's you're more freer if you were just
Why?
created by nature rather than just being determined by
Why?
another being. Well, if a being said, "I'm going to make you jump in squares and like jumping in squares, and you have no choice but to jump in squares," that
And if nature did
seems
the same.
that seems horribly immoral rather than if it just came about by random natural processes.
Why does it seem immoral? Because there was because there's culpability related to the demon.
Yeah, so I'd say that the demon is forcing
Or
you to do
culpability
this.
related to the demon if he's also controlled.
Yeah, so I'd say it's controlled by the greater demon. It was fine by me too.
Or it's controlled by like an infinite regress of demons or nature.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm saying that the nature one's fine. Nature just doing it, that means that you have a unus.
I think the only thing that's changed is your emotional state towards the demon and nature.
Sort of. It's just saying, where do you come from? Do you come from nature? Do you come from determined process? It's just the origin.
And I think that's why you're saying that the best of all possible worlds would be modified, because you'd be saying that, well, in the best of all possible worlds, I certainly would not be controlled by an evil demon.
Well, not necessarily. It doesn't say that. It would just say that that would be immoral if I was.
I don't think there's a rational justification as you can say why it would be always worse. Like you could say like, or like why it wouldn't.
It wouldn't necessarily be worse. It would just be a different origin. So, for example, I could create a person to enjoy candy versus creating a person to enjoy stabbing themselves in the leg or whatever. And clearly one of those is going to be better. And it's possible that nature would cause someone to want to stab themselves in the leg.
Wait a minute, how would one of those be better?
Liking candy versus liking stabbing yourself in the leg. Like if I was an evil demon, I could cause someone to deliberately desire to do something which would cause them suffering.
I thought the standard for the action was the action and not the consequences. So why could the desire for stabbing yourself in the leg be worse than the candy?
Again, so I'm just going off of physical suffering here. Like if I'm an evil demon, I can program you in any way I want to do anything I want.
Suffering isn't morally relevant. So
What?
why would it be worse?
What?
You said physical suffering wouldn't
It's
be
just
morally relevant.
an analogous argument. It's not the suffering that makes it bad. So as an evil demon, I could make you do anything I want, which means all of your determinations aren't what you want, they're what I want.
Okay, yeah, but okay, well, but we've just agreed that like the idea of identity is actually an ad hoc which describes your.
Well, no, I'm not saying the conscious experience thing. That part of identity is the same. That part doesn't matter. What I'm saying is your will isn't your will. It's my will. I'm making your will whatever I want it to be.
Your will is just, again, an ad hoc of whatever the hell you're doing, right? Whatever processes that are going on in your brain, because that's how determined.
Yeah. So, but your will is not your will. It's mine. I've made your will into what I want it to be.
Well, it's nature's. It's not anyone's. There's no individuality in terms of it being anyone's. It cannot be property. It simply is.
I'm not sure what you mean here. So two hypothetical possibilities. One is there is a God and he's the ultimate nature of reality. One is there is no God, it's just nature. And both of these things create a being in some way. In one case, the God says, I want your will to be this, and I've made you in this way. And in nature, it just does stuff and it happens to pop out a being. In these two cases, there's a difference, is that the will of the person in the God world isn't his will. It's the will of the God. The God made your will into that. So you couldn't say it's your will. It's the God's will. And in nature, you can, because in nature, there is no will prior to your will. And so your will is just your will, and that's it.
Your will is essentially what is your will? Just Tell us what it is.
The biochemical processes in the brain.
Okay, and they're always your biochemical processes in the brain.
If your
Like,
will
it's always
was
in your brain, in the sense that it's like, regardless of what language we place upon it, they occur in the same place in the same way.
Yep, ontologically, there is no difference between you and
Ontologically.
either of these universes
So there's
physically.
only a nominal difference.
Yeah, like how you came about, your origin. That's the only difference.
Okay, so let's say the origin's the difference, right? Like, what I don't understand is how, if the biological processes in the brain have been created by the evil demon or by nature to create you in a certain way, how does your definition of individuality, of identity, change whether it's yours or not? Because it's still yours in terms of your definition of identity, because it's still
No, because
happening in the brain.
you're conflating two different definitions of identity. One is that, like, if I create a car, give it a BMW stamp, it's a BMW. The BMW process was determined by something else. Some other person made this thing, so it's not itself. It's not its own signature car. It's a BMW. But if
But
the
it seems
first
like
car that
you're
was
trying to
ever
say that
made,
it's yours because it's self like if the origin is like, it's almost like you're trying to say that the origin is you when it's nature. Do you know what I
yes,
mean?
yes, or there is no other conscious entity before you if you just pop out of nature from nothingness.
But
You
then,
are the origin of you.
like, the origin wasn't you, it was nature.
Yeah, that's fine. The will is
And
you.
but then it doesn't, like, so if the origin isn't actually you, and then these actions aren't actually yours,
No, they are
you
yours. If
think
they
they
come from
are.
nature, they're you because there was no prior will. So it's like the argument against God about having omniscience. If God knows everything, it's impossible to have free will because He already knows what you're going to do before you do it.
Yeah,
It's the same kind of thing.
predetermination,
If there's no God, then
predetermined.
there's no contradiction there. There's no contradiction in nature not knowing what you're going to do and having free will. It's only a contradiction if there's a God who knows everything. Then there's no way for you to have free will. But if there's not a God who knows everything, well, it's possible for you to have free will.
It's what you're describing free will as.
So I'm
That's
granting
where
libertarian free will. I'm granting libertarian free will here. So if we grant libertarian free will, it's impossible to have libertarian free will if there's a God who knows everything. But if there isn't a God who knows everything, well, then it is actually possible to have libertarian free will.
Okay, just to clarify, what do you mean by free will?
Libertarian free will, the complete.
Just no, so actually, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, like, what do you mean by, just give us a definition of just free, like, yeah, libertarian free, or just like free will, yeah, just free will.
Yeah, like the God kind of free will, the ability to do otherwise in the case with no determining process and not being determined by random.
To be the
process.
cause.
Yeah, so
To choose
it's not determined, it's not random. Free will is its own kind of ontology of third option.
Okay,
In
in
libertarian
which
free
the
will.
individual produces their action, they are the cause of themselves.
Yep, causa
Okay, right,
sui, whatever.
cool, right. Compatibilism. What would you give a definition of that?
Compatibilism is just determinism, and you're just defining some of the determined processes as being free will, even though they're all determined.
Okay, okay, okay. So compatibilism is essentially, but I don't
Determinism.
think you describe. You don't. I don't think that I would argue. I wouldn't argue that's compatibilism, man.
There's
Uh,
different versions of compatibilism. I like Dan
yeah,
Dennis'
like,
version.
for the most part, when I've interacted with compatibilists, it's like, it's kind of like psychological compatibilism, kind of like that, like was it the content of your own thoughts or the expression of your will? You're produced by nature, but then nature, you are still in existence because you're an aspect of nature. Therefore, you're um, trying to enact your will against the world as an expression of you, quote unquote. But then, why does the origin of where you come from, if it's ontologically the same, modify that definition of your volition, of what makes your action yours? I don't understand. Like,
It's the
how does the
same. It's the
demon,
same as the free will
how does
argument.
the demon, like, so for example, the demon creates you.
Yep.
You exist.
Yep.
You act within the world.
Yep.
Those actions are yours.
Yep.
Why?
Because the demon made you that way.
But nature made you that way as
Right.
well.
So again, the difference is the same difference between if a God exists who knows everything, if a God exists who's omniscience, you can't have libertarian free will because there's no ability to do otherwise. The ability to do otherwise is gone if someone already knows what you're going to
That's
do.
the same with, like if, let's say, like, nature predetermined, if nature determined every single, like, it's Like it's the exact same thing. Like
Right. So I'm not making a literal comparison to free will here because I don't believe in libertarian free will. The point is that if there is a being there who knows something, there is a difference in the ontology between the two worlds, which some properties are going to be limited in one that are not limited in the other.
right. What you're saying is that the demon would know that your actions were theirs. Is that
Sort
what you're
of
saying?
saying that my actions, my will is just in its will. It's a subset of its will.
Of course, what if we were to say, let's say, as we say, the infinite regress of the demons, right?
Right.
And there's no actual pinpoint causa for the action, right? There's an evil demon, greater and greater and greater throughout all of eternity. Is that the same as nature then? Or is there someone actually in control of your actions? Is there a difference?
If it's an infinite regress of demons, that would still all be demons, and so it would still be immoral.
But would we be able to say that there was someone who actually chose in terms of it was theirs and not yours and so on?
Well, each individual demon would be able to say that I'm not me because of that demon. So yes.
Right. So no, like if they were to say I am not me,
Because my will is a subset of its will. So really, I'm just him, a part of him.
I see what you're trying to say. I think what you're trying to say is, like I said, it's a notion of identity. Like your identity being a subset of another identity means that it's not your identity.
Yeah, it's just a part of him.
But then, like I guess like my point would be that your identity isn't necessarily. I don't think that it's a subset of. Like the whole point is that your identity would never be the subset of any identity. Your identity is just like, for example, what you're attributing to an already predetermined causal like ontology. Like yeah.
Like
So
if
like
there was nature and nature
it's
created
just
a being.
it's just a name. It's nothing like it's not actually a thing, right? Like you don't exist in the sense that like your will is unique and it exists in the sense that it's
Yeah, your will isn't its own
in any way
independent.
that's different from what it would exist. Like there would be no ontological variation. The only thing would be like an epistemological, maybe like you could say that like the demon thinks, for example, that he's in control. Like
Well, no, think about an example of where there is a world who exists and the world creates a being, and then that being creates a different being. In that case, the first being is himself. He can justifiably say, "This is my will, and I am me." The second being can't,
but why does the first being think that he's himself?
because he was supposing that we know that he knows that he was created just by a random process in nature. There was no prior will determining his will, so he's not a part of a different will.
So he knows that he was created by some random process in nature, and what he attributes to that random process is his
No, he
his
doesn't
will.
attribute.
Like, his identity is him.
His
And then
identity is a unique thing that has emerged from this random process.
And then he creates another
Right.
causally. So the same causal process. And he says that person now acting upon the world is an aspect of me because I created them.
Yes. So if you determined all the processes in their will, then they're just a part of you. Now you could possibly just create a random process.
Like an aspect of nature.
Yes, he's an aspect of nature. But that's not a will. Nature doesn't have a will. So his will is himself. You can say that's him.
But what he's attributing to saying that's him is just the fact that like
there was no prior will.
Yeah. He's describing an aspect of nature and then saying this is a will.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Like, yeah, that's not a problem. That's called an emergent property.
Nature and him. Just as there's no difference in saying that it's you or the demon or you and
there's
nature.
definitely
it all remains the same.
No, it's so simple. Like for example, if suppose I was created by nature, so I'm purely a random process, there is a me, and I create two beings. One being who I've determined all of their processes to be exactly what I want them to be, and one being who I just left to random chance. The random chance one is moral. The one I determined is not moral.
So, but when you say like,
even if they come out to be the exact same being identically, the fact that I determined that one to be exactly the way I imagined it means it isn't an individual self. It's a subset of my will. And if this one just came out by random chance to be the same thing, I didn't determine it to be anything. So it has a different property to it. It has its own self.
Like, it seems though that there's no reason to say, like, even if like nature exists, that there is a self.
Self is just an emergent property of natural things that didn't exist prior. So like stars
What you feel
exist.
like is the self is also describable just as nature.
Yes,
So why are you
just
using
like
the word self?
stars are describable in the terms of electrons, but they are still an individual thing, but it's not the same as all of their electrons.
The individual thing exists regardless of whether it was created by another.
Right, the
Like for
individual, the
example, like
self, the identity
like
exists, but there's a difference between the morality because one is determined as a subset of another will and one isn't. There's a separate property there, just like the star isn't the same as a ocean or a planet. They have different properties.
like I understand that obviously the difference between this ontologically, the difference between a star and an ocean is really easy, and you say they have different properties. The difference between you being exactly the same in two possible worlds where you were created by a demon or created by nature, um, and that in both cases we're ad hoc describing your will as something other than the determining process to give you a descriptive notion of individuality, which is absolutely not necessary, like not the case. It's just all like individuality in this case doesn't actually exist. It's not like it's an individual. It's like it depends on what we mean. I guess it depends on what we mean by individuality, and that like
Well, it's like take a car for example. Like if I make a car and you make a car and they have exactly the same properties, other than like they're in different spaces or time or whatever. One is my car, one is your car. There's a different property there, even though they share all of the same physical traits.
I get like I get like I mean like but let's say we were to say that there was a car that was like and unless I hopefully won't repeat that back to you. That's it. So you said two separate. Did you say two separate cars or the same car?
There are two separate cars that have the same properties, other than like they're in different spatial positions.
Okay. Now imagine they're exactly the same. Leibniz's law, everything the same.
If they're exactly the same, there can't be two cars.
No, there's one car.
Yeah,
Right. I say it's my car. You say it's your car.
yeah,
Whose car is it?
yeah. Neither one. Whoever
Right.
made it.
It's a description of the same car, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it would like whoever made it. It would be their car.
Like the whole point is that like there has to be a determining factor of property.
Right. So whoever made
Right.
it, if we don't know
I,
who made it, we can't say whose car it is. But if I
so
made it, then it's my
when I say
car.
something is mine, what am I saying?
You're determining some kind of ontological basis of who has authority over it, essentially. So,
Have you, or
if we have
have you
one car and we ask who made it, me or you, if I made the car, it's my car. Like we can say, yep, it's my car, even though we can't know, like just from looking at it.
So, like, what we're saying is that there is a standard which allows me to say that something is mine or not.
Yeah.
And that standard is, would you say, just arbitrary or?
Well, what's arbitrary in this analogy because we're just making it up, but it's just the ontological
Well, I mean,
basis of
like property in general. Like, what is like for example, for me to say like this is like my chair.
yeah,
Um,
it's just the fact that you own it. Like it's has some kind of ontological origin to your a relation to you making it in some way or buying it or assembling it or whatever. So if the causal relation begins with you, it's yours, and if the causal relation begins with me, it's mine.
Yeah, but what if the causal relation, like let's say like I stumbled upon the car and then said this is my car, and at the same time we both stumbled upon the car and said it's our car. There's no one that could claim it. Is equally.
Epistemologically, we couldn't know, but if ontologically we could know who made it, then we could say, yeah, it's definitely that person's car.
But why is making it, for example, the notion of property? So, for example, John Locke would say you mix your labor in with the world, and that notion puts an aspect of your will within the world. That combination is what makes it yours.
We're
You
just
can do the
defining it
same
that
with
way for the point of the
the same
analogy.
with, you can do the same with money and say that it's the same thing. That money is an aspect of your will. That it's just the translation of your labor into monetary means.
Yeah,
Like,
we're just defining ownership in that way for the sake of the argument. The same kind of thing applies. Like the way I define will
but
as
then I think
having.
it's important, like for the notion of it being like identity in you, like saying like I am
Well, no, no.
me.
So yeah. I'm just defining the property of identity as being individualistic if it comes from nature, and I'm not defining the property of individuality as coming from another will. I'm defining those things differently. From my understanding, that's.
But then that's the thing. I would just say that's that like the definition there is like it's arbitrary. Like there is no like like there is no that's why I said it's nominal. There's just it's an arbitrary definition. There is nothing more immoral, quote unquote, in something being different. It simply would be different. In fact, you've mentioned multiple times throughout the debate that what morality is in terms of what is a reflection of correspondence to the good which already exists and is being described. If that good is that we were created by an evil demon, then in fact, then could you not say that your being created by an evil demon is moral?
Well, no. So, because again, I'm saying that morality is referring to some actual moral object that exists. And if I'm right about this object, then my definition about identity would also be correct by extension. Right now, you're right. It's just an arbitrary definition I've made up. I can't prove I'm right about this, but it is, again, it would be correct if my idea about this moral object is correct.
Right. Okay. I see what you're saying, but I'm saying that in both possible worlds, they would be if because let's say there were two very impossible worlds equal of equal weight, they would both be as moral as each other, would they not? If because if
If
in
they're
world A,
given
in
everything
world
else
A,
being the same, yes.
yeah, right. So why do you think like I don't?
So again, morality is defined as an involuntary imposition of will. In the case that a person deliberately designs you to be a specific way, that would count as an involuntary imposition of will. If nature just does it randomly, that would not count in that sense. So by my definition, if my definition happens to be correct, the one case of just nature popping you into existence would not be immoral. The other
What
case of a deliberate
okay?
being creating you to
What
do
makes
something
your
specifically,
definition correct?
if it corresponds to the existing moral thing.
But what, okay, and the existing moral thing would be um
A platonic
uh
object kind of thing.
platonic, all right, and that platonic object. Oh my god, like it's like so like when we talk about let's say like you being whether it's your will or not, right? And that in that it's just an ad hoc kind of like I'm defining it this way.
Well, no,
And
no. So I'm saying that
the
whether
deductive argument that makes the deductive argument from what I understand that makes world A where you'd perform like you're created by nature better than world B where you're not created by nature. What makes that A better is the fact that you've defined
no, no,
you.
no, no, never ever, because I've defined it. Again, so my definitions are just a way to describe the object. The object is what makes it true. The object is the truth bearer. My definitions are just trying to describe the object. So the object is essentially my description is describing the object. So it is saying that a world where you're not created by another will to do exactly what the other will wants you to do would be better than, or would be worse than, a world where
The
you're
only thing
created
you said
randomly.
yourself, the only difference between those two worlds in terms of like there is no ontological difference. The only variation is the origin of your ontology,
That
which
would technically be an ontological difference. So there is a difference
okay,
between
yeah,
those
but you
worlds.
said like in terms of what, for example, in the criterion from which we would associate your identity, there would be no variation
Yeah, we couldn't
unless
tell the
you say that
difference,
there is
just
a
like the
variation.
cars.
In which case, what makes you you?
Right, right. Just like the cars, unless we could, the only difference between the car would be who made it, and that would determine
Right,
the
but
who ownership.
if your brain doesn't make you you, then yeah, or does it?
Again, that's a conflation between two different definitions of identity. Identity, as in the thing that has conscious experience, that kind of identity is going to be the same in either way. Your identity as an individual will is different depending upon what the origin of the will.
I think we're probably just going to have to disagree.
That's fine. That's fair. We can do that. No, you must
um,
agree with everything I said.
no,
No.
no, I don't do that. I guess the point I would make is that, like, I would say for something to be your property, well, that is yours. I would say that the origin has to be accountable to you, and if we say that you is, you know, the totality of action urging processes within this being, it's the conscious awareness, it's the it's you know, it is the totality of your experiences, and that is you. I would say that the origin of you cannot change the metaphysical identification of it being you. Then but and then I would go on to say that like what I would actually say is that what makes you you isn't simply just perceptual awareness in terms of making your action yours. I would say that you can like for example you can be coerced into an action, and it is yours in the Sartrean sense that you're condemned to be free, you've volunteered. But what we would really normally say when we say that when someone gives you a choice between two negatives and you choose the better negative, that you haven't been able to choose. You've chose between your choices have been limited by another, like they've imposed upon your will. And what I would say is that the removal of imposition comes through the applicability of reason, which is self-determination in that respect. Do you know what I mean? So if I say like
Oh
if
yeah,
I
yeah,
remove
I know what you mean. I would just again, I'd go back to the fact that reason is just more of an emotional process in our brains, and I don't think free will is possible. And because of those two things, I think that the definition you're describing is something I would see as incoherent. Um,
that's
but
fair enough. Like
to try and explain the difference I see between being created by a being and being created by nature, if you roll 10 dice and they all roll a 6, I see that as more special than if I'll just deliberately place them all as a 6. I see those as two different things, even though physically they're all the same.
right, so if you roll 10 dice, wait, sorry, say that just again
Like if you just
because
randomly roll 10 dice and they all just land 6s.
whilst
Um,
play.
yeah, and then but if that I would see as more special in a way than if I just deliberately place them all 6s.
Yeah, yeah, I understand that, but then like seen as more special, like for example, let's say you had like for example, like random chance has produced like the sixes and like, but then that's not what we're saying. That the difference isn't a change of intention within you, because the intentional state would have always, like let's say the intentional state was, because the difference there's an actual difference in action and behavior when you change the dice, right?
Well, no, the dice are the
But like,
same either way. The dice are going to be physically identical
yeah,
in
the
both
dice are the
cases.
same, but you aren't the same.
Well, in the analogy, I'm the dice. I am the 6s. The
Right.
identity of the individual is the
Okay.
6s.
Okay. I thought you were the one rolling. Okay.
So yeah,
Uh,
I'm like the one who deliberately places the dice as a 6s would be like a demon designing you, and the random dice just rolling and all landing 6s would be like you coming about by random
but it's just a
processes.
feeling then, yeah. Like, there's just like it's like there is no difference. It's just a feeling. Like you feel like it's more special. It's like it's exactly the same.
I can probably, given enough time, think of how to articulate that in physical terms, but there is clearly, it seems like there's a difference between those two.
It's a greater sense of chance in the sense but then what you're doing is you place an arbitrary value on rarity.
Yeah, essentially, it's not determined. It's a random process. It's random rather than determined in that case.
Indetermined, which means that it's also not free, which is
Yeah, yeah.
uh
So in like I said, free will is impossible because either everything is
but it is,
determined
wait a
or it's
minute, it's
random
not
chance.
determined. No, wait a minute. You said it was
No,
determined.
no, no. So
Like
again,
in nature.
by
So
determinism, my position is either everything is determined or it's random chance. Those are the two possibilities. Free will is like a third
determinism.
possibility. So determined or
Yeah,
random
right.
chance, I'm fine with both of those.
Okay, and what you'd say is that indeterminism holds more value, but that's arbitrarily.
Possibly. So I just made this analogy up 5 seconds ago, so I'm still thinking about it.
Right.
But yes,
That's fine. That's
that
fine.
would be more, that would like lean in the correct direction. Is like the indeterminacy of the dice would be have a greater value to it in some sense than the determination of it being placed there by the person. That'd be my initial phrasing.
Of course, I would ask you what value was, and then you'd say the will, yeah?
So yeah, something like that.
But then the
And
will was created by either process. And so what you'd say is that what you're actually like, and this is what I think. I think you're saying that your will would prefer to be randomly constructed rather than determined by like it would rather be indeterminately constructed rather than determinately constructed. But either way, it's not free. But you cannot help but prefer the
well, no, the
idea.
preference is this is purely just definitionally. I'm saying that if involuntary imposition of will like is the definition of morality essentially, and someone else's will constructs your will, then your will is more just a reference of their will, not you, because they are expressing their will in the way they're creating you, whereas nature isn't expressing its will in the way it's creating you. So just by my definition of moral and immoral, if you're constructed by another will, then you're just that will expressing its will or accomplishing its will. You're not nature. You're not like in the other
Well, I
case.
mean, well, what we're saying is there would still be a metaphysical variation, wouldn't there? Because there's your will and their will. You're a will constructed by their will.
Right, but again, the difference there is you are a result of their will. You
It
are
doesn't matter because you're still
based
your
on my
will.
definition of morality, it does matter. It's very
And
important.
but how? Because it's still your will in the exact same way as it would be your will if it was nature. What the criterion of what makes it you is remains constant.
If you are a result of someone else's will, then that's essentially like you being their property. You're not you, you're them.
What makes you you isn't
No,
necessarily
again, that's
your.
you're conflating the two different definitions of identity there. One is the individual thing that you have a sense experience, a qualia, and the other is your origin of being a result of a will. So I would
Yeah,
still
but
say
you don't ever have yourself as property in the sense that you're never your own causer in your view. Yeah,
right, but that's not
that's
the
fair.
difference. The difference is
But no, that's fair. So that means you can never be your own property.
not sort of, I guess. I don't know what that
Yeah.
even means. But again, the difference is that one is you are a process created by a different will. You are a different will enacting its will to be produced, and one you're not. And because my definition of morality is contingent on immorals are involuntary impositions of will, morality is the assistance of will. Those two things. Because of that, you are a result of someone else's will. You are their property. You are their will, not
See,
your
I would say
will.
that the problem there is that you're describing the same ontological object in two separate ways. And I would say that the issue then is with your definition of morality. Because then what you'll be saying, I mean, reality is that if it's all about will, the actual will of the evil demon is what you should be trying to act out anyway.
Yes, if it was the only kind of will that existed, for sure. But
Then
again,
so I don't see how it could be more less immoral.
in
Like
in
less
my
moral.
world, if you create a being, you can't determine its processes. So in the best of all possible worlds, if you presumably created a being, it would be free of your determination. You could not determine it. That would be immoral.
Right. Okay. So in the best of all possible worlds, the demon wouldn't create you.
Couldn't. It could create me as an entity, but it couldn't determine any of my will-based processes. Because that would be immoral. Like in my best of all possible worlds, it seems obviously immoral that if you could create a being any way you wanted to, that is bad. No. So there has to be
But
some kind of
there's no difference in you at all. Yeah.
the resulting thing may or may not be a difference. Like I could create a
And
being in lots of different ways,
the
but
reason that we determine whether it is your will or not your will is a variation in your origin.
yes. So again, in the best of all possible worlds, it would be immoral for me to create a being to do whatever I wanted it to do. That would
And
be
the reason
immoral.
we say that the variation in your origin is what defines whether it's your will or not is because it's either it's you are the property or expression of another's will.
Yeah, again, it's all based on the definition of morality. In the best of all possible worlds, if I created a being to do what I wanted it to do, that would be immoral. If I created a being and allowed it to determine its own processes through random processes of nature, whatever, that would not be.
Yeah. Okay. Like we could say but I kind of understand what you're saying, but I think that I just absolutely disagree that there is any difference in terms of I don't think there is an actual difference there in terms of ontological or even attributable differences in terms of language. The only difference is nominal in what I would argue.
I
But
don't
we
think
can
so. I think there's clearly an
disagree
ontological difference between someone creating someone and someone being produced by like the dice, rolling the dice versus placing the dice.
what your right, like what makes your will yours in terms of what we describe it as isn't the ability to choose, it's the ability to associate your actions, behaviors, and thoughts with your brain, well, with the brain or whatever that is naturally produced.
I think you're focusing too much on the language of the identity and the will and saying whose it
I'm not.
is.
I'm trying to understand because
Oh
it
no, I
seems
know,
that
I know. I think that was my fault for using those words. So I'm trying to change the analogy to make it clear now.
right.
In my best of all possible worlds, if I'm right about morality, then it would be immoral for me to create a being to do what I want to do. That would be immoral. And so if I am the receiving end, if I am the being being created, it would be immoral for me to have been created and forced to do whatever that being wanted me to do. If I was just created by nature, it would not be. That would be fine. If a being just created another being and allowed them to be determined by nature or whatever, that's fine. But it is not moral for me to create a being to do whatever I want them to do, based on my definition of morality. So there is a difference between those two cases.
What if you create if you create a being that wanted to do whatever they wanted to do, and whatever they wanted to do was whatever you wanted to do, would that change it?
No.
So if you wanted,
So yeah, if like I could
if
design
you
being X to
created
like apples, and or I could just allow being X to be created and they just happen to like apples. What they happen to like is irrelevant. Nothing about their will makes a difference. The only thing that matters is did I force them to do it or did it was it nature?
okay, but then this is the whole point. Like you didn't like there is like the force is through determinism is just dominoes falling causally through the universe.
Yeah, so like if you get run over
So
by a car or die from
like if you
hunger,
create a being that is just the same force running through, like all we are is that same force. Like it's just that we are describing it in different terms.
again, that doesn't make any difference. The fact that everything can be causally linked in some
So
way to ultimate causal reality makes no difference. It's just how we categorize things.
like what I don't understand is that um is how this would affect like a moral conclusion in terms of, for example, the being that like their will would still be their will, and the imposition of their will would not be occurring because there would be no one to oppose it because it is your will and their will have aligned, so there's no imposition. So where's the immorality?
Because by that definition, it's just my will. There is no their will in that definition of identity. But that's why, again, that's why I'm trying
But
to,
this is the thing. What's making it yours?
because it's an extension of my will. I desired to make it that way.
So you've created something which has its own conscious awareness,
Yep.
right? It's
But all of its
determined by your
will,
actions.
so it has a conscious awareness, which is its own. I don't have its conscious awareness. It has
You
its
don't have
conscious
its conscious
awareness.
awareness.
But I have its will. I determined its will.
You've constructed it to have a will that is an aspect of your will. A part of your will was to construct this will. You've constructed that.
Yeah.
How is it your will?
Well, if I determined what it wills to do, then it's my will. Like if I said all of the things in my head are going to be transferred into what it wills or what it, in some way, then its
Why
will
did
is just
no, if it's got its own conscious awareness, which is
right.
separate from yours,
Yep.
and it has simply the exact same thoughts and behavior patterns that you've gave it,
No.
how is it any more yours than its?
Because again, it's all determined by me. Like it doesn't have an
You
itness to
weren't.
it.
You are determined by something else.
Yep, that's fine. So again,
And
if
so
it's
how is it
determined by a
determined by?
being, it's immoral. If it's not determined by a being, it's not immoral. So again, just take the common moral example. If I kill someone, that's immoral. If a rock falls on someone, most people don't consider that to be immoral. There's a difference
But
between
in
those two.
terms of the physical causal nature of morality, which you're proposing, there is no difference.
Ontologically, again, so just use the common understanding of morality. In the common understanding of morality, there's a difference between a person killing someone and a rock killing someone. Those are not the same thing. There's a difference there. Most
But
people,
what I'm saying is that the difference doesn't actually exist in terms of culpability, responsibility, which most people would assume if determinism is true, so that it's a spook. It doesn't exist.
it does in many different
If
models.
you're saying that it's a if you're a physical description of reality, then this moral
Again, that's
uh,
not a problem in compatibilism. Compatibilism does not care if we're determined. You can still have culpability. So it doesn't make a difference whether or not we're determined. You can still have a difference between those two.
the culpability is just an ad hoc of, oh, you're culpable for something that actually it's like yes, but actually no.
That's what compatibilism is. Yes, that's
it's
fine. That's totally fine to do that. It's just categories of different ways to classify things. That's
but
totally
then
fine.
morality is like if you were to say that morality, all it is a description of human behavior.
Well, no. So you can. It's a description of the Platonic object. But the point I'm making is that there isn't a problem with saying that there's going
It's
to be a difference
if
between
you
this.
say it's a description of the Platonic object must only be in reference to human actions then, because they're
No,
not in reference to rocks falling.
that in my view, rocks falling on people is immoral. So it does, but that's a different topic. Um, the only point I'm trying to make here is that you can make a distinction between a person doing an action and a rock doing an action.
Just to clarify, in your view, the rock falling on someone would still be immoral, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it would be an
100%.
imposition of their will.
Yep, always.
Right, cool. In which case, can we not say that there is like for example, the imposition from nature and the demon is identical in the sense that it'll either always relate to nature or always relate to the
No,
demon in the
no,
sense that it's a predetermined causal action.
no.
That there is
Again,
no actual choice there. It is the illusion of choice that you are relying upon to say that there is an actual difference.
No, because again, the difference isn't you coming into existence. Creating a being isn't immoral. I'm not an antinatalist in that sense. So that's fine. It's the creating a being and then determining the process it wants to be. So the process here is if I create a being in my world and make them do everything I want them to do, that's immoral. If I just create a being and let them fumble around in nature, that's them. Because whatever parts of nature that determine who they are is also a part of them. It is their who they
But just
are.
the same as the demon, they are a part of the demon just as much as
Yes,
the
they're a
demon
part
is
of
a
the
part of
demon.
them.
They're a part of the demon, which means they're not them.
No, because they own that aspect of the demon just as much as the demon owns that aspect of themselves.
No, they don't own the part of the demon owns the demon.
No, because neither of them own it. Neither of them caused it. Neither of them have any capacity to associate themselves with it to a greater degree. It is the same thing occurring in two separate places.
No. So in the nature case, the parts of nature that determine you are a part of you. You own those cases. In the demon case, you don't own those cases. The demon owns those cases.
But then the ownership, you said, like, we made a distinction in terms of identity, didn't we, between like ownership in terms of being able to associate one's labor
Right.
and association of oneself with phenomena, like with the reality that we experience, like the totality of our experiences. Well, the reality is that there is no difference in our associations between the mental objects in my head and the mental objects in their head. If they're both the same, right? Let's say my will and their will in a certain aspect is the same. That is just as much an aspect of my will as it is their will.
No, again,
There is
so ownership is determined by the causal process in which the thing came about. Like if there's a car and we want to say whose car it is, whoever's causal process caused the car is their car. So the causal process in the demon case.
If you say it's causal, then we can agree that neither of them caused those things in the first place. That's an illusion.
If the demon created someone, they caused it. So we're assuming
No,
like,
but no. The demon thinks they caused it, but that was an illusion of free will. There was a greater demon, or it was nature.
So we're going to get rid of all of the infinite regrets and say there is a God who is the thing, or nature is the thing.
No, rather than saying God, because God implies like an actual free agent. Like I'm saying that there is a determined universe in which there is a being, which then creates you within it, right?
Then again, that would be the same thing. So if you were created by another being that isn't you, you're their property. You're not you. You're not your property. If you're created by nature, then you're your property because nature doesn't care. Nature doesn't have any property rights. It doesn't care.
But this is the point. Like property rights, like what you're saying is that when you say property rights, like they have no right to your thoughts anyway. Like more than you do, they have the ability to construct and they have no ability to identify with them more than you. You identify with them exactly the same.
Again, you're conflating the identity thing. Again, you keep conflating the two different kinds of identity.
Your thought of, like, if you could say that I am your thought of me, and then they go, no, you're not, and then they could change it, but then you would change with them, and you go, well, I'm still that same. You could say I'm still that same thought.
You're conflating the direct sense
is that you would
experience.
always be that aspect of them, and they would always be that aspect of you. There would be no, like, just as much as you are an aspect of nature and as nature is an aspect of you, we're describing the same thing in which there is no control, no choice, same like same phenomena. Like the only thing that is actually appearing to be different is our nominal categorization of it, which is ad hoc.
No, again, I've already covered this multiple times. We're just repeating ourselves.
I know,
if I'm created by a demon,
we're not going to agree.
I know we're never going to agree. But if I'm created by a demon, the demon can change me in any way it wants, any time it wants. I can't change the demon in any way I want, no matter what I do. It has authority over me. Whereas in nature doesn't do a damn thing. Nature is just there, and any part of nature that is conglomerated into you, you can change. Nature doesn't do it. You do it. That's the difference, is because the will thing, this emergent property of will that exists or comes about through nature, didn't exist prior to it coming about. Whereas in the case of the demon, it did exist. There was another example of that will thing prior to it, which caused it to come about.
But even if we said there was nature before the demon, you seem to think that it was...
If there's nature before the demon is free, but you're not free because you're property of the demon. So its will is free, yours isn't.
We are going to agree to disagree. I think that is the best way to go from there.
That's fine by me.
Okay, and I wanted to pull you up on one more thing as well before I quickly we'll have like maybe it's like 5-10 minutes at the end or something just to blast through veganism because I really we need to do that.
Sure.
So the stabbing, you said that it would be worse to be made to stab yourself in the leg than eat candy. Why?
That
to
was
then
just
to decide
that
you
was just
can't
an
eat.
intuitive example to show things that we normally agree on to try and make the point. So it wasn't.
Intuitive. You said ethics is intuitive anyway, so I don't see the
No, I was just using a common example we would typically agree upon to try to make a point. It wasn't
why would we
actually
typically agree upon that?
because we don't like pain.
Okay, so we don't like. So we're saying that it would be worse to be made that way because. But then you
Oh, no,
said
no, no.
someone
So
who
I'm not
likes
saying it's
pain.
objectively true that that's the case. I'm
What if they were
just
designed? So do you think there's a difference? So if someone was designed to be to like pain and stab themselves in the leg, and then someone was designed the desire to eat candy, do you think there's a difference?
no, like if they both came about by random chance and were
Okay.
determined, they're fine.
All right. Okay, that's just one I want to pull up because I was saying
Yeah.
that definitely doesn't work under your theory, because there would have to be a standard outside of one's
Right.
own volition and desire that would then okay.
Yeah. So that was just a common
Oh,
example to try and make the point. It wasn't actually an ontological argument for stabbing being
oh,
worse than
oh,
candy.
that's fair. That's fair. 1 second. Um, right. Um, right. I'm gonna have to go in a second because I'm just getting a call. But 1 second. Yeah, like I was just gonna say, like, we'll just quickly move on to veganism then.
Yeah. Sure.
Just okay. So you would agree that veganism is the moral thing to do.
Yes. Killing animals is immoral
Why aren't you doing it?
because I don't care. I like cheeseburgers.
You say you don't care, you like cheeseburgers and it's the moral thing to do, but then you're saying the best of all possible worlds, we would all be doing the moral thing to do. So you would agree that you are being irrational for not doing it.
Yeah, immoral. Yeah, I wouldn't say irrational because I have a rational desire for the taste of food, and I don't think and that is more important to me than the rational desire to be moral. Therefore,
But
I'm
in the best of all possible worlds, then would you say that we would be vegan, or would you? I guess in the best of all possible worlds, you say there wouldn't be a contradiction. Would be eat animal products and not?
yeah.
Uh,
You could just have steaks fall from the sky.
okay. But which world would be better? The world in which there was the least imposition of will, or like more or less imposition of will.
What? Least imposition of will is always better.
Like so, for example, the best of all possible worlds is the least imposition of will. But world A is our world, which people impose their will upon animals.
Yeah,
In world B is the world in which they don't impose their will upon animals.
yeah. B is
Um,
more moral.
B is better. Yeah,
Yeah,
B is more moral. And so you should want to be in B.
should want to be in B. Like what we
Or
want
would
is
you,
irrelevant
are
to
you
my
saying
morality. So it's like I
so
don't
like
need to want the moral things. I could be an immoral person and want immoral things. I could be Hitler and want to kill lots of people, and that would be contrary to what the best of all possible worlds would be. What I want,
I
the
don't
best of all
think
possible
that
worlds isn't about what wants.
I really wouldn't describe what you're describing as morality. Like I would not in terms of like I would say like moralis, like if we look at like what morality is and has been described out through history, like I mean moralis is it's come to be known as a noun in certain circles, like would describe my values, blah blah blah. But in reality moralis is moralis is a derivative from ethikos, the Greek, like moralis Latin, ethikos the Greek, and that means like pertaining to behavior, in which they say it's the standards in which we use to determine our actions. um and what you're describing seems not to be about morality. What you're trying to describe is the good. You're trying to describe the platonic good, not morality.
Right, but then if we use the good as the grounds to determine what our actions should be, it could be the same thing.
But then, in which case, if we were to say that, then in which case you should want, if you're saying it's the grounds,
Yeah, yeah.
then you
So
should,
if
then
I
I'll be,
was if I was a moral person and I wanted to be moral, then I would use this as a basis to determine that I should want to be in a world where there was no meat. But I
but like,
don't care
so,
about morality. I care
so
about
you were saying
meat.
like, so if you were to say that, like, so you should want to be you should want to be
Yes.
vegan,
Yes, you should want to be vegan.
right?
I just don't care. I just like cheeseburgers.
Why don't you care?
Probably because like motions and pleasure mean more to me than morality.
Even at the expense of others.
Yes.
So if you were given the option to hurt someone and it would bring you pleasure, you would do it.
Um, Probably.
Okay. So
Like if I was given the option between my life benefit or someone else's life benefit, I would choose mine. I would say that
what if
if
it was your life benefit and the benefit of, let's say, 5 starving children in terms of, let's say, £5 and then 5 starving children? You wouldn't have any guilt afterwards either.
I'm not, what do you mean? Like if I was saying feed me or feed the starving children, I chose to feed me. Yeah, I'd feed me every time. Like my life I value more than all of the
No, no,
starving
no, no.
children.
Like more. I mean, like not. I mean, like for example, you could donate 1 meal a week to starving children.
Um, like I could do that, but I mean I don't know what you mean. Like
Okay. Well, what if I was saying that like let's try and say this another way. Like, what if I was to say that instead of, I'm gonna have to go in 5 minutes if that's okay.
yeah, no problem.
What if I was to say that I think that the because of the way your descriptive aesthetics works, if I start talking prescriptively, it's just going to kind of just get
Well,
muddled up, and
I can just adopt
you're gonna.
your viewpoint
So the
and
best way to do it would be just to directly influence your emotions, right? Like that would be the um because like in terms of
well I can
like
adopt a prescriptivist.
I mean I would argue that this is, I mean, I just want to be clear. I think you're absolutely wrong about morality, and I know you feel exactly the same about me. Um, but for the sake of this, I'm just going to do this just because I think the animals deserve it. So, um, why do you think that you would live a worse life if you are vegan?
I don't. I might live a better life if I was vegan.
So wait a minute, wait a minute. So you think you could live a better life? I mean, like right now, you're saying that you don't want or you don't care, right? But I'm saying
Yeah,
but you care about yourself.
yeah.
Obviously, that's why. Like you don't care. You care more about something else. You kind of care. You just care more about yourself.
Well, I care
I would
more
say
about
that
the
realistically, you could be living a much greater life in terms of health,
yep,
environmental
yep.
impact, in terms of overall um, your ability to, not have to worry about harming something, maybe
Yep.
potentially prevent the, guilt forming in your consciousness, whatever, and achieve the same pleasure. Why would you not do that?
I just say inductively, I just see the eating of meat as a reliable means to achieve pleasure. I do not see veganism as a reliable means to achieve pleasure, so I choose the eating of meat.
Have you tried going vegan?
Yes, Impossible Burgers are terrible. They're disgusting.
You don't have to like all vegan food. Like, right, look, right. I didn't like. Do you like all omnivorous food?
No,
Like all meat, dairy, and eggs, and all them animal products. You like all of them, and every combination.
no, in every combination. No, pineapple does
No.
not go on pizza.
Right. Okay. So like there's things that you like in certain ways, and like that's the whole point of cooking, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So what I'm saying is that like all you need to do is learn how to replace those pleasures in your life, and you would be living a more moral life.
definitely.
Would would you not desire to just try and change those pleasures in your life to represent the same satisfaction so that you could live the more moral life, so that your actions are more consistent with your description of how you should be acting?
No, I'm way too lazy for that. I want cheeseburgers. Like you're absolutely right. I could potentially do the research and the effort to find vegan alternatives that tasted just as good as meat alternatives, but I'm too lazy for that. I like cheeseburgers. I know cheeseburgers taste good. I'm good with that.
Right. But why do you not want to do the research anyway?
I'm lazy
Because you could find a pleasure that was better.
because I'm lazy. I don't want to do the research. That's
Okay, you're
research
lazy,
is
but
anti-pleasure.
you're lazy, which is like, right, like you don't want to do it because
It's
yeah,
yeah.
it would bring
Research
some
is
form of
pain.
dissatisfaction.
Research is suffering.
But okay, yeah, but let's say you did it, it's possible that it could be worth it in the sense that you could gain greater pleasure overall. Even if you didn't go vegan, you might simply discover new meals that you would enjoy. But like, there's a good chance you could go vegan if you would have replaced them, like, hypothetically. So, would you? Would it not be worthwhile in the end?
It could be, but it could not be. So the way I see it intuitively is that right now I'm at a watering hole in a desert, and there could be another bigger
Oh,
watering hole over there, but I'm not going to travel to do it because I'm happy with this watering hole.
heart attacks. like
Heart attacks?
things like animal products, like, you know, we're talking about like vascular disorders, you know, things like, you know, dementia, like they're pretty fucking horrible. Um, I think we can agree that you would probably want to avoid those like negatives.
Typically, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So you could avoid them, and like all it would do is take a little bit of action now. Does the value of now and later, is the value of now always greater than the value of later?
Yep, there was 0% chance of me actually trying to be a vegan unless super hot girls asked me to.
Oh my god. All right. Well, if there's any super hot girls watching this, please get in contact with TJump. For the cause, for the animals, ladies.
Do it for the
You know.
cause. I am for this. I will totally try veganism. Absolutely.
All right. There we go. There we go, guys. That's this debate. But no, seriously, like, I think, like, for example, like, there is always the, like, I think if you were to think about it, like, you might want to avoid, let's say, 14 out of 15 leading causes of death. Um, and that pretty horrible chronic illness, 10 years of suffering that you could probably get away with not feeling. You probably, I think if you think about it rationally, you're gonna value then as much as you value now, because they are both present moments of your experience. So it would be more rational for you in reference to your desire to achieve at least a plant-based lifestyle.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I think that's perfectly reasonable and rational. I just think I value the current now and the laziness and the taste of cheeseburgers more than I value the future perception of those things. So I just
Or
don't
the
care.
future suffering, like that, like, because you could obviously, like, you know, like but then the reality is you'll always value suffering the same, which is why it's like
Yep. I think your argument is perfectly rational and reasonable. I just like cheeseburgers too much to care.
okay. So it's, would you agree that you're being irrational then?
Yes. Happy
Okay.
to.
Right, well, I guess it's not. I can not do anything from that. Like, what about? Okay.
If
Well,
liking
it's gonna become.
cheeseburgers is irrational, lock me up, right?
Well, hopefully, when it is the law that everyone will be vegan. Uh,
It will be. I think that in the future that's going to happen. Absolutely.
I think so too. I think so too. But anyway, mate, I'm gonna have to shoot off.
Yeah,
But it's been really fun. Thank you for having us on.
definitely.
Do you mind if I upload this to my channel as well?
Oh, of course, do it. More exposure is better. Upload it everywhere.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Well, I hope you have a nice night, and thank you all, everyone who's watched this discussion. I hope that, you know, because we've got, I mean, half of it was metaphysics and epistemologies and just arguing at each other about those things. So for everyone who's watched, my God, God bless you. You know, like, how did you make it through this? Like, like, I don't know how. I probably would have clicked away. But no, thanks to everyone who's watched. And
Oh yeah, and
yeah,
do you
like,
want to tell other people about your channel so they can find it?
oh, are you sure? Like, is that all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I'm Perspective Philosophy. You can find me at Perspective Philosophy on YouTube. Yeah, I also have a Discord server. Yeah, if you like, it's not as, I don't know if it's as active as TJumps, but if you ever want to get in contact with us and ask us a question about this debate, that would probably be the best place. And yeah, like, it's all about, my channel's all about like learning philosophy, like in a variation of different forms. And I'm actually writing my PhD on defending animal liberation. So yeah, in a very, very different ethical mainframe than TJump, right here. So,
Okay, mine's better.
yeah.
We'll just.
But thank you again for having us on, and thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It was a lot of fun. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, take it easy, mate. Bye.
This episode of the TJump podcast is brought to you by you. If you value this content, please consider supporting the channel.